Chapter 901, How have you been? Yu Qinlai stood respectfully. After being in power for 10 years, Ming Yuyi seemed to be a different person. She was still beautiful, but there was authority at her brow, and that pair of spirited eyes had become as deep as the ocean. No one cared about her age any longer. Everyone was fearful in front of her and didn't dare to breathe. Over the last 10 years, Ming Yuyi had successfully eliminated her political enemies. There was only one voice in the Yao. The Council of Elders had no power. All of the important departments and elite battalions were in her control. After reading the reports, Ming Yuyi's brow furrowed. Liang Wei. She had a reminiscing expression. This name clearly stirred many of her memories. Liang Wei of the Ice Frost Corps. She had some recollection about this name. He was a silver battle general that had accomplished a great victory in the war against Kunlun. Then he had been relieved of his duties and sent home. This had been an example of corruption she had used to attack the Council of Elders, and it had created some big waves. Yes. Yu Qinlai said cleanly but certainly. How did he get to Nether Realm? Don't know. Yu Qinlai said calmly, should this be investigated? There was no flaw to be seen on his face. While he had buried the matter that he had interacted with Liang Wei in the past, he had not relaxed. As he hid in the shadows for long and longer, he became even more careful. He would not leave behind this one opening. Therefore, Yu Qinlai promoted all the subordinates that had participated in that meeting, and gave them more power. In this past decade, the biggest mission carried out was the cleanse. Yu Qinlai was the sharpest blade in Ming Yuyi's hands, and his subordinates naturally had to participate in these missions. Promotion meant that they needed to take harder and riskier missions. Therefore, these people slowly decreased in number. Liang Wei had been politically silent for 10 years, and these people had forgotten him long ago. These people would never have thought that the matter of Liang Wei was the cause of their deaths. Because they had died for the public good, their families were taken care of. They could enter the best Yao art houses, and they could get steady jobs. Violent times was the best concealment. No one noticed the systematic sacrifice of these people. Even these people did not detect it. Too many people had been sacrificed in these 10 years. Even Yu Qinlai had been heavily wounded multiple times and almost died a few times. Yu Qinlai rejoiced at his past cautiousness. If any of the people were still alive, he would be in trouble. If his past subordinates were still here, and Liang Wei suddenly appeared under the command of the Nether King, everyone would find it strange. Ming Yuyi did not respond and sighed in regret, I misjudged. In the past, I thought that he was just an average silver battle general not worthy of recruitment. I hadn't thought that his talent would rival Misu. I missed recruiting such a famed general. It is a great mistake. Also, as a Yao, he leads a MO battalion. It seems that us Yao will also have a battle general like Bihan. Ming Yuyi was filled with regret. Based on Liang Wei's status in the past, she only needed to show some attention, and he would be faithful. 1,000 soldiers was easy to obtain, one general was hard to find, especially a general like this. In this battle, Liang Wei formally made it into the ranks of top battle generals. Shaking her head, Ming Yuyi threw away her vexation. How is the fighting between Kunlun and Mo Cloud Sea? The two have started an all-out war. Yu Qinlai paid extra attention to Mo Cloud Sea and knew it well. From the intelligence reports we have received, the two sides have not prepared for the final battle. Mo Cloud Sea's intentions at the beginning was to use North Tianhuan as a lure to attract Kunlun so they could ambush from the back and expend Kunlun's military power. Kunlun wanted to first take Tianhuan and get rid of weaknesses as it strengthened their holdings, and then use the 4 minor Diana sects or Guliang Dao as a target to initiate the final fight with Mo Cloud Sea. Ming Yuyi nodded. Li Xian'er's move was beautiful. Mo Cloud Sea had to accept her proposal, and Kunlun had to fight. She showed a smile. The two titans will fight for a long time. We need to take this chance to rest and recover. When both sides are wounded, it will be the time for my Yao to rise. The Yao who had just recovered slightly from the cleanse could not move. No one knew better than Ming Yuyi how much the Yao had exhausted themselves in the 10 years of internal conflict. In her view, the internal fighting in the Xiuzha and the Mo world was a blessing from the heavens for the Yao to recover. Darren is wise. Yu Qinlai said with an expression of agreement. Inside, he smirked coldly. He had gotten in contact with Pu. While Pu had not said it, he could hear from Pu's tone that Pu had other plans. Yu Qinlai was extremely smart, and he had worked in the intelligence field for many years. He was skilled in finding the truth from hints. Liang Wei had appeared in the command of the Nether King. Thinking about Pu's certainty, the return of Wei Sheng and the others to Mo Cloud Sea, and Zhuo Mo's impeding return, he reached an absurd conclusion: the Nether King was possibly Zhuo Mo. In reality, he frightened himself with his conclusion. But he quickly calmed down. If this was true, then Zhuo Mo was unprecedentedly powerful. This was a nightmare to the other factions. In his view, the Mo Shan Temple could not withstand for long. The difference in power was too great. The Mo uniting could not be stopped. If his guess was true. Once Zhuo Mo defeated Mo Shan Temple, he would possess Hundred Savage Realm, Nether Realm, and Mo Cloud Sea. He would become the strongest in the world. The only chance to resist would be for the Yao and Kunlun to ally together. But now, Ming Yuyi decided to wait until the two sides finished fighting. Yu Qinlai smirked inside. Once Zhuo Mo finished uniting the Mo, he would be stronger than Kunlun. More importantly, Kunlun would never imagine that the Nether King was the king of Mo Cloud Sea. With Zhuo Mo's plans, Kunlun would suffer a great loss. Yu Qinlai understood Pu well. With Pu's style, he might not move, but if he did, it would be a fatal blow. He would not give Kunlun a chance to come back. At that time, would the Yao be a match for Zhuo Mo? No one had expected that after all the fighting, the most outstanding general under the Nether King's command was not an Mo but Liang Wei. In the past, everyone thought that the Nether King's weakness was that he had the soldiers but lacked capable generals. This lack of generals referred to the top-ranked battle generals. Hundred Savage Realm had always been fighting, and the battalions had been reduced, but they had a group of top battle generals. Mo Shan Temple, the Mo Marshals Alliance and Heroes Alliance all had top battle generals. While they were much weaker than the Xiuzha Alliance, they were much stronger than the Nether Realm. Nether Realm had been relatively peaceful, especially after the Nether Realm had been united, there had been no more fighting. Without the experience of battle, it was difficult for top battle generals to mature, even for large sects like Kunlun with their outstanding battle general training systems and enormous number of battle generals. A true top battle general would only come out of battle. Now, Nether King's shortcoming was made up. Other than Liang Wei's appearance out of nowhere, there was now Qi Xing, formerly of the Heroes Alliance. Qi Xing was a large reason why the Heroes Alliance was able to survive while being squeezed between the Mo Shan Temple and the Mo Marshals Alliance. He was the most outstanding battle general of the Heroes Alliance and the only top battle general the Heroes Alliance had. But Qi Xing had terrible luck. Liang Wei cleverly avoided his position and pushed into the core of Heroes Alliance. He had immediately recognized the situation and hurried back to save the higher-ups, but he was a step late. All of the Heroes Alliance higher-ups had surrendered. He didn't even have the time to fight back, he could only surrender. Qi Xing was much weaker as a warrior compared to an Mo. This could be seen from the scale of the two battalions. With Qi Xing's strength, he could only lead 6,000 elites. But an Mo could easily lead 10,000 without a problem. While in terms of strategic ability and perception, an Mo was lacking. Zhuo Mo selected the elite of each battalion for Qi Xing to assemble a troop from. In Zhuo Mo's view, top-tier battle generals need top-tier battalions. Qi Xing wasn't bad, but his original battalion wasn't great. What Zhuo Mo had the most of right now were battalions. Liang Wei had accomplished a great victory in capturing all the higher-ups of Heroes Alliance. The collective surrender of Heroes Alliance meant the number of battalions under Zhuo Mo swelled again. So many battalions. There definitely were enough to create a top battalions for Qi Xing. He did not worry about Qi Xing. He believed that Qi Xing was not so dumb. Right now, he had the two spears, Liang Wei and Qi Xing. He also had an MO in charge, the experienced and reliable general. There almost wasn't anything for him to do. On the other side, all the Jies under the rule of the Mo Xing Temple moved. The development of the war robbed people of hope. The advancement of the Nether King's army was almost unimaginably fast. Once Heroes Alliance had surrendered, it left Mo Xing Temple to fight alone. They had no place to retreat. The Mo Xing Temple had expanded greatly in the past years, and had conquered almost half of Hundred Savage Realm. It was still the largest faction of Hundred Savage Realm. Of the 5 Mo gods, there were top experts and top battle generals. However, they were lacking compared to the Nether King. Especially after the god-level Nether King's attack on Skywood Jia shook the world. People had seen the strength of a god-level through the battle at Nether King River. However, experiencing it in person was completely different. An Mo was the main commander, Liang Wei, and Qi Xing were the second-in-commands. A three-pronged attack formed. An Mo was not the strongest, but he was reliable and he had the respect of the troops. Zui Mo did not worry with him in charge of the army. Nothing more needed to be said of Liang Wei. He was the rising star of the moment. Zui Mo also put great hopes on Qi Xing. He wanted to see Qi Xing's abilities. Zui Mo was organizing the territories of Hundred Savage Realm they had conquered. He needed to first set up the political structure before he would be able to attack the Mo Xing Temple without any worries. Once they swept the Mo Xing Temple away, it was time for them to turn and pincer Kunlun. By that time, there would be no time to deal with all of this. The battle against Kunlun might continued for a long time. At that time, a steady rear was important. Also, managing Hundred Savage Realm was not suitable for the Mo of Nether Realm to do. He needed the Mo of Hundred Savage Realm. Only then would he stabilize Hundred Savage Realm as quickly as possible. Zui Mo had met the higher-ups of Heroes Alliance but he didn't have a good feeling about them. Those people were too average in ability and would not able to fulfill their duties to his satisfaction. Others thought that Zui Mo had no one to use, but didn't know that Zui Mo had selected candidates a long time ago. He thought back to the time at Great Peace City with a reminiscing expression on his face. Princess Xia. The Lan brothers, I wonder how have you been? Chapter 902, the final battle of the strongest and god-level Shui Dong battalion was ordered to a sudden stop. There was a battalion waiting silently ahead of them. Shui Dong's pupils suddenly contracted. Vermilion Bird Camp. After hearing of Beihan and Xin battalion's actions, Shui Dong was not too surprised. It was confirmed the 4 minor Diana sects and Mo Cloud C had been in cahoots for a long time. His position had been exposed. How could Lil Miss, with his abilities, not guess his target? A hint of smile suddenly appeared on the corner of Shui Dong's lips. Fighting spirit burned in his eyes. He had been anticipating this battle for a long time. Gongsun Lil Miss. Vermilion Bird Camp. An undefeated battle general. An undefeated battalion. Only a person like this qualified to be his opponent. In Shui Dong's eyes, Gongsun Cha was the only one that could be his opponent. He never thought of Bihan or people like Yang Yuanhao and Gu Liang Dao as his equals. There was only one person that could be discussed together with him, Gongsun Cha. The strongest battle general of Mo Cloud C, Lil Miss that smiled beautifully as he caused the world to feel terror. Shui Dong had studied Gongsun Cha before. The more he studied him, the more admiration he felt. Shui Dong thought that he had reached the epitome of what it was to be a battle general. While he had not reached the state that he would be undefeatable, there had never been a battalion that actually made him feel threatened. Even Gu Liang Dao, the tiger of Xixian, had been crippled by him. If Gongsun Cha had not come with help in time, Gu Liang Dao wouldn't even had the chance to flee. Shui Dong's opinion of Gongsun Cha was extremely high. Gongsun Cha was like him, they didn't have clear weaknesses. Just like him, Gongsun Cha was skilled in grabbing people's weaknesses. Just like him, Gongsun Cha could change his style as he willed. The only thing different was the style of fighting. Xue Dong's style was domineering and brutal like a crushing hammer. Gongsun Cha's style was sharp and flexible like a razor-sharp blade that stripped flesh from bone with each strike. In terms of training new talents, Xue Dong thought that he was far behind Gongsun Cha. Gongsun Cha trained one batch after another of first-class battle generals. These battle generals were the core of Mo Cloud C's strength. Internally even Kun Luan thought that the skill level of Kun Lun's battle generals were not as good as Mo Cloud C. In these last 10 years, other than fighting, Xue Dong invested almost all of his extra time into training new people. Once he thought of Gongsun Cha as his rival, the competitive Xue Dong could not allow himself to fall behind Gongsun Cha in any field. The appearance of new talented generals in Kun Luan these past years were in part due to Xue Dong's efforts. However, Xue Dong still felt they could not compare to Mo Cloud C's Ma Fan and the others. This displeased him. He always anticipated having a true battle with Gongsun Cha. He hadn't thought that the chance to arrange the battle would come so soon. Xue Dong stepped out. Almost as though they had a prearranged agreement, Gongsun Cha also came to the front of his troops. He saw the bashful Gongsun Cha. Even though Xue Dong had seen Gongsun Cha in the mirages before, he still stilled. This guy opposite him was like a neighbor's boy filled with sunshine and warmth. There was no killing energy at all. Xue Dong couldn't connect him with that undefeatable battle general whose enemies fled at the sound of his name. This one is Xue Dong, greetings to Mr. Gongsun. Xue Dong bowed. Mr. Xue is too polite. Gongsun Cha's smile became even more bashful. Xue Dong would not be fooled by Gongsun Cha's smile, but he still felt a strange sense of conflict. He quickly focused and said loudly, I had originally thought that the battle between us will occur after Mr. Zhuo returned. I hadn't expected to meet so soon. It seems the battle between you and I is fated. It's not fate. Gongsun Cha still had the smile, but his words were as sharp as knives. It's strategy. Xue Dong's heart shook, but his expression did not change. He smiled amusedly. Strategy, I like the term. As long as Mr. Xue likes it. Gongsun Cha gave a harmless smile. If Mr. Xue likes it, I am even more confident. Ah, your Shixiang is a great genius, and Mr. Xue is also an invincible battle general. It would be a pity if either of you fall. Ha! Xue Dong roared with laughter. Who in the world is eldest Shixiang's match? Who is my match? The words were arrogant, but the confidence in the tone caused people to believe the words. Really? Gongsun Cha's smile was even more bashful. Does Mr. Xue think that God level is invincible? Does Mr. Xue think that there is only a Lin Qian in the world? Mr. Xue really underestimates the heroes of the world. Xue Dong's heart jumped and his eyes narrowed. However, he did not feel any fear. He laughed and said, a great battle is about to start, why play these little mind games? Let's fight. I've been waiting for this fight for a long time. Mr. Xue is right. The corners of Gongsun Cha's mouth curved up sharply like blades. The warm and bashful smile immediately filled with killing intent. Pity, war, it is not the same as before. Vermilion Bird camp against Xue Dong Battalion. The two strongest battle generals of the world, the two strongest battalions, fight. Wei Sheng was extremely fast. He was urgently flying at full speed. His target was Lin Qian. Gongsun Cha was right. War had changed. The appearance of God-level experts changed the state of war. In the past, no matter how strong the strongest was, they could not change the balance of war by themselves. This situation was transformed as God level appeared. It would not be difficult for a God level to take the head of the enemy leader among the tens of thousands of soldiers. A God level was strong enough they did not fear stepping deep into the enemy's territory. Take the general's head. This terrifying tactic could deeply change the state of war. Kunlun had also found the power of this tactic. According to their intelligence, Lin Qian had split up from Xuedong a long time ago and his whereabouts were unknown. Lin Qian's goal was either Guliang Dao or Yang Yuan Hao. Neither Guliang Dao nor Yang Yuan Hao could stop Lin Qian. They didn't have god-level fighters under their command. Also, the loss of either Guliang Dao or Yang Yuan Hao and their battalions would be a great loss to Mo Cloud C's faction. Mo Cloud C had repeatedly discussed and studied. The conclusion they reached was that god levels were unsolvable at this time. This imbalance would only be temporary, lasting about 10 years at maximum. 10 years later, the skill level of the battalions would increase by 2 levels, and there would be more pseudo-god levels. 5 pseudo-god levels would be enough to stop a god level. But that time, war would enter a new equilibrium. God-level experts would not be undefeatable and the use of battle generals would once again be viable. Top battle generals like Guliang Dao and Yang Yuan Hao could not be trained during this time. In these 10 years, whoever possessed God-level experts, who possessed the most God-level experts would have the advantage. On the way, Wei Xing had been wondering who Lin Qian's target was. Yang Yuan Hao or Guliang Dao. Thinking while traveling, Wei Xing thought the probability of Guliang Dao was higher. Guliang Dao and Yang Yuan Hao were about the same in strength, but among their factions, Guliang Dao clearly had the higher status. Also, Guliang Dao's relationship to Mo Cloud C was closer than Yang Yuan Hao. The benefits to killing Guliang Dao was greater than killing Yang Yuan Hao. Also, Guliang Dao had marched deeper into Kunlun territory. Guliang Dao had been filled with the desire for revenge after being defeated by Xuedong. This meant that he had invaded faster than Yang Yuan Hao had. This meant that it was easier for Lin Qian to find them. Lin Qian looked at Guliang Dao battalion before him. In his eyes, those people were like ants. Shuang Yu was covered in wounds. His face was ashen. His right arm had been severed by Lin Qian, yet he had no intentions of stemming the bleeding. He looked upwards at the figure in the sky. Lin Qian stood holding his sword, the white robes fluttering in the wind. He was outside the reach of the mortal realm. Guliang Dao's battalion was furiously attacking. The light of countless spells flew into the sky, yet Lin Qian did not budge. The light shield around him did not shudder at all. The rain of attacks didn't even cause a ripple on the surface. Surrender, Guliang Dao, I feed no meaning in needless killing. Lin Qian's cool voice came from the sky. Guliang Dao's spirits were extinguished. He looked at the sky. Was this a god-level expert? It was the first time he felt completely powerless. Even when he had lost to Xuedong last time, he had not been so discouraged. This kind of discouragement was not because of Lin Qian's strength but because he suddenly found that the battalion was not the strongest power in the world any longer. What would rule the world would be the god level. Big brother. A hoarse voice suddenly called out. Guliang Dao turned around. It was Shuang Yu. His eyes suddenly showed a hint of warmth. As he looked at this brother that had followed him, he suddenly calmed down. Shuang Yu, do you regret it? Regret? Shuang Yu suddenly laughed. Big brother, why would you ask this? No one regrets this. God level is really strong. Guliang Dao looked into the sky and lamented. Brothers Wo will avenge us. Shuang Yu had an expression of certainty. You are right. Guliang Dao suddenly showed a smile and said with bravado, then let us find out today, just how strong a god-level expert is. Guliang Dao motioned for the battalion to stop attacking. The sky full of lights disappeared. Everyone looked towards their commander. The cloud over Guliang Dao was swept away. He raised his arm, his expression full of murderousness, his spirit brimming. He shouted, fight to the death. To the death. Everyone shouted. To the death. Guliang Dao roared like a tiger, his hair standing on end. To the death. What answered him were the even stronger shouts from the battalion. To the death. Guliang Dao shouted with all of his strength. Even his voice had become his horse, but each person could clearly feel his intent to die. To the death. To the death. To the death. The soul-shaking shouts caused their fighting spirit to consume them like fire. There was no terror, no retreat, only stepping towards their deaths. Kill. Guliang Dao pointed his long blade into the sky. Kill. The one-armed Shuang Ye's Shen power burned furiously. His usually gentle features were twisted. He was like a ball of fire that charged with the will to die towards that figure in the sky, the one that seemed to be above the world. Kill. The battalion charged like an uncontrolled sea of fire towards Lin Qian in the sky. Lin Qian changed expression but sighed softly. The immemorial Shen sword shook and a sharp light suddenly formed. At the very front, Shuang Yu was immediately pierced by the light. Then this tiny light then cleaved through the raging Guliang Dao battalion. A hole the size of a fist appeared in Guliang Dao's chest. Lin Qian's blow penetrated through the entire battalion. Yet Guliang Dao still wore a smile. Lin Qian's expression suddenly changed. Chapter 903, In the name of eldest Shixiang, the entire battalion in front of Lin Qian instantly exploded. The exploding Shen power formed a wild sea that swallowed up Lin Qian. One hand holding tightly onto the immemorial sword, Lin Qian was protected behind the shield of light. He was filled with regret. A famed general had died so simply. Wanting to take him down as well. Pity. Suddenly, Lin Qian seemed to detect something. Almost at the same time, a great power collided with his light shield. The light shield immediately shattered. This was Shuang Ye's attack before his death. The moment the shield of light shattered, Lin Qian's immemorial shook and formed a round barrier to protect him. Pop pop pop. The surging power seemed to find a target and flooded over. Each wave of power was insignificant to Lin Qian, but they came too quickly and there were too many. The sword circle shattered. Lin Qian gave a muffled grunt. Using this wave of power, he broke free of the wild ocean of power. Having gotten free, Lin Qian looked from afar at the ocean of Shen power. He watched as it gradually calmed, and the ripples of power faded in the air. Such an intense opponent. Lin Qian sighed inwardly. Guliang Dao's last attack used the entirety of his skill at controlling battle formations. He used the battle formation and astounding technique in control to self-destruct the entire battalion all at once. This kind of thing was never heard of before. Even Lin Qian had to admit that this was an opponent worthy of respect. It was the first time he was wounded after entering God level. The wound was not serious. He would heal after resting for a few days. Lin Qian was not concerned. It was really profitable to pay this small price for destroying a top battle general and a top battalion. A pity that Yang Yuanhao was much more cunning and was harder to find. If Guliang Dao's desire for revenge hadn't been so strong, Kunlun would not have cornered him so easily. The impact of Guliang Dao's death would be as a huge one for Mo Cloud Sea. When he thought of this, Lin Qian was satisfied. At this time, a howling came from afar. The howling seemed to contain the faint tinge of a dragon's presence. Lin Qian looked in the direction of the howl. The horizon seemed to be dyed in red and was unspeakably terrifying. A figure seemed to draw a bloody arc across the sky and was charging over at astonishing speed. The figure suddenly disappeared from view. In the next moment, an upright figure carrying a sword appeared in front of Lin Qian. Lin Qian's pupils suddenly contracted. Wei Sheng. What caused Lin Qian's heart to sink was that other than the faint presence of dragon, Wei Sheng had the same presence as he did. Lin Qian knew what this meant. God level. Wei Sheng was God level. Waves formed inside his mind. In that battle of the Central Plains, he had seen with his own eyes how Wei Sheng had burned Shen power to fight. He knew what the consequences of burning Shen power were. Wei Sheng burning Shen power back then at his power level should have died. Even if he managed to survive, he would be crippled. How could he have entered God level? A hint of sorrow flashed through Wei Sheng's eyes. He had come a step too late. The remnants of Shen power remnants here revealed what that just happened. But when Wei Xing's gaze landed on Lin Qian's face, it turned to steely determination. Long time no see, Brother Wei. Lin Qian was warm and polite. I hadn't thought that Brother Wei had entered God level as well. Brother Wei has finally found the sword path of your heart, as expected of us Sword Xiu. Wei Xing shook his head. The sword I practice is not the same as yours. Yes. Lin Qian nodded. It is hard to say who is right or wrong on the path of the sword. However, we can determine who is strong or weak. Wei Xing, do you dare to fight me in the name of the sword? Lin Qian pointed his sword at Wei Xing, his white robes flying, his presence intimidating. If it was anyone else, I would give them the chance for a fair fight. But the fight between you and I is not a study of our paths of the sword, it is a matter of vengeance. Wei Xing did not avoid Lin Qian's gaze and said honestly, I once swore a sword oath to destroy Kunlun for Wukong. Today, one of us will die. Wei Xing's tone was like the hum of a sword, decisive and intimidating. The god-killing blood sword in his hand shrieked as it pointed at Lin Qian. Lin Qian knew that his attempted scheme had failed. He had just been lightly wounded. He would not fear the disadvantage if it was any other person. But he hadn't expected that Wei Xing was also god level. This seemingly insignificant wound could prove to be fatal in a battle between god-level experts. He had originally wanted to arouse Wei Xing's devotion to the sword and take advantage attack his psyche. He had thought that Wei Xing would fall for it. Even if he didn't, it would leave behind a shadow in his herd because he had won unfairly. He hadn't thought that Wei Xing was honest and true to himself. A person like this could not be affected by simple words. The unpredictable consequences of his past machinations had created such a great enemy in Mo Cloud Sea. One could only say that fate was fickle. Lin Qian threw away his stray thoughts. While he was at a disadvantage, he was not scared. He smiled. All right. As Kunlun's eldest Shixiang and Wukong eldest Shixiang, then in the name of eldest Shixiang, let's settle this. Peerless Kunlun and that rural little sect Wukong sword sect were finally placed on equal ground for the first time by the words from Lin Qian's mouth. Wei Xing's expression was normal but his heart was affected. Teachers and sect, this disciples Wei Xing finally got this chance. The god-killing blood sword in Wei Xing's hand seemed to feel Wei Xing's fury, sorrow, and excitement. It vibrated, and the entire sky turned bloody red. The sky roiled, and the rampaging killing intent filled the world. The grass and trees on the ground quickly withered. The rivers ran red. Fissures opened on the ground, and there seemed to be blood flowing out. The entire Jia seemed to become a hellish world of blood. The immemorial sword trembled violently in Lin Qian's hand. Sharp peerless sword essences met in the air and exploded. The threads of bloody energy would be torn apart when they got close to Lin Qian. Feeling the fighting spirit of the immemorial sword in his hand, Lin Qian bowed his head and said with unusual determination, Master, this disciple will not shame the name of Kunlun. Raising his head, Lin Qian's pupils turned into a metallic blue. The sharp killing intent became slightly more grave. The red and the blue Shen swords faced off like fated enemies. Bihan looked indifferently at the dazzling variations of Mu Xian battalion's formations as though it did not matter. He could see the other's intentions. Mu Xian wanted to delay him until the reinforcements came. Pity, if Mu Xian knew that Xue Dong was being delayed by Gongsun Cha and Mi Nan had suffered heavy fatalities, would she still act this way? Bihan's gaze swept across the bodies of Xin Battalion. Those faces that were so similar. He thought of the memorial tablets placed neatly on the altars in Resting Island. No tablet was missing. All of the Xin Battalion members were represented there. The present Xin Battalion was not the Xin Battalion of the past. The new Xin Battalion possessed complete souls. From when they were born, they were mentally connected to Bihan. They were closer to Mo steeds than puppets, but they kept the battle instincts of the previous Xin Battalion members. Almost all of Mo Cloud Sea Shen crystals had been spent on recreating Xin Battalion. This Sin battalion was most likely the most expensive battalion in the world. When the last memorial tablet was placed, the last chain on Bihan's heart was shattered. The new Sin battalion caused him to feel joy and hope as though he was a child. The past Sin battalion had been weighed down by an aura of death. The present Sin battalion brimmed with life. He had stepped through the border of gray and hopelessness to touch the warmth of sunshine. They had watched him study tactics under the dim lantern light in the lonely and cold days at Xian Kong Temple. They had listened to him mumble to himself. No matter how difficult or hard, they had never left him. Rest. Please do not worry about me. A hint of warmth flashed through Bihan's eyes. He raised his head, his eyes turning icy again. Mu Xian battalion changed formations at an astounding rate, but it didn't cause a ripple in his mind. Mu Xian battalion was the most varied battalion he had ever seen. They were like a puddle of water that could change formation to fit the situation as they wished. If an ordinary battalion encountered an enemy like this, they would find it troublesome. But for Bihan, he could see their weakness at a glance. Mu Xian battalion pursued variation, but they were much less skilled in terms of both defensive and offensive power. Complex variations that lacked power were just decorative flourishes at his level. Bihan took a deep breath. Wisps of flame flew out of every member of Sin battalion. Thousands of wisps of flame flew, rising into the sky in a beautiful display. Arsonist, lit up. The flames quickly entered Bihan's body. The layers of flames flowed along the surface of the Shin device and feathers made of fire grew freely. The icy blue MO matrix at his neck flashed with eerie light. Mu Xian's expression changed slightly. MO fighting methods. She suddenly remembered that Bihan was a battle general skilled at fighting in both Xiuzha and MO styles. Sin battalion was also the only battalion that could fight in both styles. Mu Xian also knew the strengths and weaknesses of her battalion. She did not fear the unreasonable attacks of the MO. In her view, the MO fighting tactics were savage, lacked technique, and ultimately were all the same. She did not fear ordinary MO battle generals. While one person with strength could defeat 10 with skill, the battle style that focused on variation relied on softness to subdue hardness. In terms of battle formation transformations, Mu Xian believed that her battalion was at the top. No battalion was perfect. While surrounded by fire, Bihan's heart was as cold as ice. His obsessive cold demeanor meant that he was always clear-minded no matter the situation. The battle formation changed again. Threads of sword energies were like an enormous whirlpool. Any strong attacks would be skinned by these sword energies until they disappeared. Pity, many enemies would forgot that before the battle with the MO Martial Alliance's Shang Yusheng, Bihan had never relied on MO fighting tactics to become a top battle general. Battle formation variations were also one of the weapons that Bihan was skilled in. Bihan's gaze was completely cold, his lips curving icily. Having let go of his burdens, Bihan was still obsessive, still mad, but was also calmer. He reached out and pointed in the air at the center of the sword energy whirlpool. The surging power exploded at his fingertip. A blinding red light fell like a comet towards the center of Mu Xian's battalion. It did not stop there. The other fingers on Bihan's hand tapped in the air as though he was playing an instrument. For even smaller red dots of light flew towards the corners of the whirlpool, positioning themselves in a formation. 5-star formation break. Chapter 904, Bihan vs. Mu Xian. Bihan's journey of becoming a battle general was more difficult than most stories suggested. People only heard that Xian Kong Temple had 2 outstanding geniuses, one called Jiang Zhe and the other Bihan. However, only a rare few knew of the truth. Bihan had displayed his talents very early on, but his sensitive heritage became an obstacle for him learning more. Therefore, he could only learn and model tactics and strategies on his own. He was like a lonely genius that learned through repeated trial and error, discarded in a corner. His obsessiveness and cold demeanor had formed during that time. Even later, while he was leading Sin Battalion, other than receiving the right to read the Battle General Jade Scrolls, no one taught him, and no one conversed with him. However, he was like all of the silent and stoic geniuses. He did a simple thing repeatedly. Battle formations were one of the things he studied the most thoroughly, and one of the few things he could study. He had studied all the battle formations variations in the jade scrolls that Xian Kong Temple allowed him to read. He was not satisfied with memorizing them, he had started to deconstruct each one, model and try to understand them from the source. Sin Battalion became his experimental subjects, and the way to test if he was correct. He had found many solutions to formations that other people did not know. The 5-star formation break was one of those. This method did not come from any jade scroll. This was a simple and effective way to resolve, developed after reading and synthesizing a large number of battle formations. This was the first time he used it in combat. The 5 dots of light seemed to slowly enter the whirlpool. The constantly moving whirlpool suddenly stilled. Mu Xian was astounded. What was this? This whirlpool sword formation was one of her best sword formations. This had never occurred before in past battles. Even the most powerful attacks would be dissolved in the sword formation. This was. She could feel that there seemed to be an invisible barrier that separated the sword energies from each other. She almost didn't believe her eyes. How was it possible? The reason that the whirlpool sword formation was powerful was because the sword energies were connected in a special way. They could attract and repel each other. The sword energies formed a sticky field between them. Water was only powerful when it was flowing. Once it slowed down, its power greatly decreased. What were those 5 dots of light? As the sword energies flowed slower and slower, Mu Xian's expression became ugly. She immediately decided and shouted, 3-charge sword formation. The battle formation that had been in the shape of a whirlpool suddenly scattered. The battle formation rippled as though it was water, each layer rhythmically opening and closing. Suddenly the sword Xiao at the very back of the battle formation released sword energies. From the back of the battle formation, they started to release sword energies. The waves gathered. When the sword energies appeared at the front of the formation, the sword energies were a furious wave. Whoosh! The angry wave formed out of thousands of sword energies released a sound that made people tremble. Bi Han was expressionless. How could he not recognize a foundational formation like the 3-charge sword formation? 3-charge sword formation, with each wave being stronger than the last, and the waves were connected. When the first wave reached the enemy, the third wave would have been prepared. One wave after another rushing forth, each wave stronger than the last. Simple, but at Mu Xian Battalion's skill level most people would panic at the continuous onslaught. Each sword Xiao in Mu Xian's sword battalion was outstanding. The sword energies they released were condensed and powerful. Their actions could be called perfect, and they were accurately controlled. The gathering of almost 10,000 sword energies was not disorganized at all. Bi Han knew what Mu Xian thought. Mu Xian was preying on the fact that Sin Battalion did not have many people. 3-charge sword formation, not a clever sword formation. Its strength relied on the number of people and the training. Mu Xian Battalion had the advantage of numbers. As one of Kun Lun's top battalions, she had been able to easily form a large battalion out of Kun Lun's powerful sword Xiao system. If she did not have a preference for female Xiao, the size of her battalion could have been larger. Unlike Xue Dong, Mu Xian did not pick the strongest sword Xiao, but emphasized the sword Xiao's ability to obey orders and their discipline. Her battalion was easy to replenish, and due to this, her numbers were high. She had suffered a small loss at Gongye Xiaorong's hands only a short while ago, but she had still easily supplemented her numbers to almost 10,000 people. Bi Han was not affected. A fight between top battalions did not depend on numbers. Facing the howling sword energy waves, Bi Han was expressionless. He suddenly moved and charged towards the howling sword energy waves. Sin Battalion spread out silently behind him. He chopped with his hand. The red hand energy was like a blade. Sin Battalion all chopped with their hands in unison. The thousands of red hand energies flew like birds into the hand energy Bi Han released. The energy suddenly multiplied exponentially in size and roared intimidatingly as it faced the sword energy waves. One blue energy, one red energy. One surging powerfully, one razor sharp. Bihan's next move made people jump in fright. Charging at the formation. He led Sin Battalion and drew out threads of red energy in the air to follow closely behind the red hand energy and charged. Was this person crazy? Mu Xian stilled and almost exclaimed in shock. If the two waves of power collided head-on, it would explode. Wasn't charging at this time seeking death? The power of a Shen power collision at such a strength was enough to flatten a town. Even Sin Battalion would die if they were in range of the clash. Bihan was moving with his back slightly bent. Sin Battalion moved the same way he did. They followed closely behind Bihan in their battle formation. If this was at any other place, Mu Xian would find it clownish and laughable, but right now, she couldn't laugh. Because he was Bihan. Mu Xian's eyes were wide. She didn't even dare to blink. When she saw what happened next, she almost didn't believe her eyes. Hiss! Like thick cloth tearing, the reddened blade seemed to slice through butter. The flaming red energy easily cut through the first sword energy wave. Bam! When the red energy cut through the sword energy wave exploded like a pillow stuffed with feathers. Tens of thousands of sword energies exploding like feathers made a spectacular scene. That bam was not loud, but it was akin to thunder in Mu Xian's ears. She looked dazedly at the sword energies shooting into the sky. They were completely out of control. He had disrupted her attack so easily. How was it possible? How was it possible? The scene in front of her completely upended all of her knowledge. She had never heard of this counter against the three-charge sword formation. A term jumped into her mind, deconstruction. Yes, it was deconstruction. The sword energy wave was deconstructed in moments. That was why there was no explosion. The uncontrolled sword energies entered Bihan's battalion. Sin Battalion lit up with light. At the center of the battle formation, an enormous white lotus appeared and slowly spun. It gave off faint walls of light. The sword energies only created small ripples when they hit the curtains of light. Mu Xian recognized this battle formation. A classic defense battle formation from Xian Kong Temple, with Lotus Protector. Mu Xian was astounded, but the battle did not pause at all. The icy blue MO matrix on Bihan's face suddenly lit up. The fiery blade in front of him made an extremely small tilt. Hiss! Bam! The sounds were the same as before, and the effects were the same. The second wave of sword energies were immediately broken down. The sword energies filled the sky. Hiss! Bam! The third sword energy wave arrived quickly after and almost reached Bihan at the same moment the second wave did. However, it was not of any threat to Bihan. Mu Xian's heart felt a chill. She smelt the scent of danger. She felt a thread of terror at Bihan's skill in battle formations. She had never thought that there would be a day that she would be defeated in the field she was best in. Bihan's understanding of the three-charge sword formation was greater than hers. She could not do what he did. She knew that Bihan's fire blade had to have been aimed at the crucial point of the sword energy wave to have such stunning effects. However, while she understood it, she still felt great fear. That wave was made from almost 10,000 sword energies. There were more than tens of thousands of changes occurring in one instant. He was able to find the weakness of the sword energy wave among such complex changes. She could not do it. However, there was no time for her to think. Bihan had closed the distance between them. If this was a few moments ago, she would have been overjoyed. Their most effective move was to use the sword formation to trap the enemy. But now, she lost all confidence. Would the sword formation be able to trap the enemy? She didn't dare to think deeply about this question. She forced herself to calm down. The long sword in her hand waved down. The battalion spread out around her in response. In the sky, Bihan saw all this. He was unaffected and continued to follow the hand energy. Sin Battalion silently changed position around him. The Wood Lotus Protector formation suddenly shifted into a classic offensive formation, Fearless Charge formation. The Fearless Charge formation came from the fearless seal of the Diana Shio. It emphasized being fearless in mind, and all minds as one, to attack from the front, and defeat others based on strength. How could Mu Xian not recognize the famed Fearless Charge formation? She took a deep breath and raised her sword. A round sword energy floated up under her feet. Inside the flowing battle formation, everyone raised their flying swords like Mu Xian. Round sword essence appeared below each person's feet. Round hold formation. Round shapes rose from under the sword shio, sliding across their bodies and flying into the sky along their swords. If one looked down from above, they would see thousands of round sword essences. They looked soft and weak like a group of jellyfish floating out of the ocean. Round hold formation was the counter to Fearless Charge formation. Any battle general that had proper training in Kunlun would not make a mistake in this. The four great sects of the past had competed intensely and were familiar with each other's battle formations. In the training of battle generals, there were descriptions of the classical battle formations of other sects and how to defeat them. Kunlun battle formations focused on offensive power. The round hold formation, however, was the best choice to defeat the Fearless Charge formation. Even Xian Kong Temple's teaching materials in the past emphasized that one could not use the Fearless Charge formation against Kunlun's round hold formation. Bihan's lips were in an imperceptible curve. Just as he expected. He had no real intentions of changing. The distance between the two sides was rapidly decreasing. Sin Battalion suddenly flashed with light. Bihan's hands moved like flowers blooming. A golden giant hand appeared in front of the battle formation. The hand formed the Fearless Seal. A fearless and powerful presence suddenly formed. When the Fearless Seal appeared, it was like a mountain pressing down. The presence was so ferocious people felt as though they could not fight back. That red hand energy seemed insignificant in comparison. Mu Xian was puzzled that Beihan was following through on the attack, but she didn't have time to think. She could only prepare to receive the attack. Yet unexpectedly, that powerful and enormous Fearless Seal suddenly sank and hit that red hand energy that had been dismissed by others already. Chapter 905 Wei Sheng's sword. The hand energy did not shatter. It seemed to disappear into the air propelled by the hand energy. In the next moment, it penetrated deep into the round hold formation. Mu Xian's mind was overwhelmed with fear. That terrifying energy had brushed past her body. The sharpness caused her hairs to stand on end. The sword shio to the side of her were not so fortunate. The surrounding emptiness caused her to feel as though she was exposed in the air and she had no sense of safety. There seemed to be an empty street next to her. When one looked down from the sky, there was a terrifying wound that cut a path through the entire battalion. Mu Xian had experienced many battles of various sizes. She had experienced danger before, but today was the most dangerous one. The danger had come so suddenly and without any warning. When the blade energy had brushed past her, she hadn't been able to move at all. In the sky, Bihan thought it was a pity, his aim was off. If he had killed Mu Xian with that blow, then this battle would have been finished. However, he quickly threw the thought to the back of his mind and his thoughts returned to the battle occurring right now. Soon, Bihan seemed to detect something in the enemy battalion. The attack just now seemed to have given a greater shock to the enemy than he had imagined. The enemy still appeared as though they had not recovered and their reactions were delayed. An opportunity. Bihan perceptively realized this was a rare opportunity. Sin Battalion were like opportunistic wolves that roamed around Mu Xian Battalion. When they found a chance, they would bite. Bihan was extremely precise. He would cause a river of blood with each attack. He closely circled the perimeter of Mu Xian Battalion with Sin Battalion and charged a few times. In a few short rounds, Mu Xian Battalion had suffered heavy fatalities. Mu Xian finally recovered. Seeing the battle formation wavering, she felt extremely frustrated. She had been scared by Bihan. That should not happen. Mu Xian forced herself to be alert. She knew that if she wasn't careful today, she might end up dead. She suddenly thought of Shui Dong's orders. Delay Bihan and find time for Mi Nan and Shui Dong to perform a pincer movement. Her eyes immediately lit up. She recognized that Bihan's skill in battle formations were higher than hers, but if she decided to stay on the defense, it would not be easy for Bihan to win. Delay. Having made her decision, Mu Xian immediately changed tactics. Bihan quickly detected the transformation in his enemy. His mind moved and he guessed Mu Xian's intentions. Delay. He was expressionless as he started to slow the pace of battle and slowly roamed around Mu Xian battalion. Given her training, Mu Xian could focus for a long time, but her battalion could not maintain focus as long. They would eventually get tired, get distracted, or relax. But Sin battalion would not have this problem. As long as Bihan was focused, Sin battalion would be focused. Bihan had enough patience. He was also not in a hurry. Even if the opponent was Shui Dong, he was confident in Gong Sun Cha's abilities. As to Mi Nan, Bihan dismissed him. In Bihan's opinion, Mi Nan had lost the qualifications to be a top battle general. Mi Nan looked powerful, but in reality the ability of his battalion had decayed a great deal. They had lost the focus in their mind. Mu Shuang had fewer people, but Mu Shuang who fought with the intent to die had the ability to drag Mi Nan into hell. At this time, with Bihan holding this region, the pressure on the supply lines decreased greatly and large amounts of resources and people had started to gather towards Mu Shuang. Also, Bihan just received news that Gongye Xiaorong had not gone back to recover but moved towards Mu Shuang's defense line. Bihan knew that Gongye Xiaorong was not going there to defeat Mi Nan but to prevent Mu Shuang from seeking his death. Bihan looked coldly at Mu Xian battalion. Boom boom boom. The blue and red figures in the sky rapidly changed position in the air and collided constantly. With every collision, terrifying Shen power would explode like a volcano. Shen power vibrations that could be seen with the naked eye swept at everything. Under their feet, the mountains collapsed, the ground cracked, and terrifying cracks and bottomless holes dotted the landscape. Even the sky started to show cracks. The red figure was shrouded in blood as though he had just been drenched in a bloody pool. The sword in his hand gave bloodthirsty whines. With every blow, it created mists of blood. The blue figure was untouched by dust, elegant and dignified. The sharp presence of his sword reached into the sky. Each blow seemed to slice through the world, and could not be stopped. This Jia started to show signs of collapsing under the blows of the two god levels. Wei Sheng was cold like granite, and would put all of his power behind each blow. The pairing of the powerful dragon heart's ability to make blood and the god-killing blood sword was a match made in heaven. He was devoted to the sword to start with, and his heart towards the sword had never changed in the many years. Adding on that he did not have to pay attention to other matters, his sword essence was a fraction purer than Lin Qian. The savage god-killing blood sword was securely under his control. The bloody mists caused the world to be filled with the tang of blood, but it didn't affect Wei Sheng at all. Lin Qian was amazed. He had not underestimated Wei Sheng, but he hadn't expected that Wei Sheng's accomplishments in the sword were greater than he had imagined. Lin Qian had been the most outstanding genius in Kunlun's history. Excelling in every area, he had talent that people envied, including cultivation. He was the leader of Kunlun and still no one in Kunlun could rival the speed of his cultivation. His skill in the sword surpassed his master and no one in Kunlun's history could rival him. But he had not thought that there would be someone even stronger than him. The other's god-killing blood sword was astoundingly powerful. Lin Qian could feel with each crossing of the swords that the immemorial sword in his hand would be corroded slightly by the blood. If this was a normal time, Lin Qian would be able to eliminate the blood's corrosive taint with a thought. However, the two were in the midst of their fight. They would cross swords hundreds of times in a breath. He had to focus all of his attention to block, parry, and counter the blows. He had not time to take care of the corrosion. Fortunately, the immemorial sword was not weaker than the god-killing blood sword, and was even a fraction stronger. The other's god-killing blood sword would also receive wounds from the sharp presence of the immemorial Shin sword. Both sides were gritting their teeth and holding on, not even giving up a step. Lin Qian's light injury gradually caused him to end up disadvantaged. Wei Xing's expression did not change. He was fighting intensely, but his mind had gone far away. Where was the limits of the sword? He still hadn't found the answer. The limits of the sword were what he had pursued all this time. He suddenly thought of the experiences of his cultivation, of Wukong Mountain, the sect leader, the masters. He thought of being with Sua Mo and the others at the sealed extinction battlefield. The sword oath roared in his ears like thunder. Countless faces flashed through the blood ocean in front of him. What was the sword? He had reached god level, but his sword still couldn't bring the sect leader and the others back to life. A hint of bewilderment flashed through his eyes. He instinctively waved the god-killing blood sword in his hand. A great power came and he suddenly refocused. A hint of understanding formed. What was the limit of the sword? He still didn't have an answer, but at this time, he understood something else. The river of life was fickle, and people were living in the present. Even the strongest sword could bring back lost happiness. The meaning of the sword was to protect and guard the present happiness. His brothers, family. The resolve of his oath. The sword was his life, his heart. Only with the sword in hand could he protect those things he held dearest. He was willing to use his life to guard this happiness. This was his sword. Something seemed to silently shatter in Wei Xing's body. His mind was completely calm and at peace. As though it felt Wei Xing's thoughts, the god-killing blood sword suddenly exploded with light. The savagery within the bloody light disappeared along with the tang of blood. The bloody light was pure and a soft red like that of a crystal. There was an honest presence that reached people's hearts. Lin Qian immediately felt the difference. Originally, there had been a thread of savagery and hate in Wei Xing's sword essence. This thread was powerful, but Lin Qian was not affected. He didn't feel any regret or feel guilt about what had happened in the past. He had carried out the plan for Kunlun. His life and soul only belonged to Kunlun. All other things were ants in his eyes. But right now, Wei Xing's sword essence was peaceful and neutral with an open aura. It caused him to feel even more pressure. The enemy's sword essence seemed to have suddenly multiplied in weight. With each blow, the flow of his Shin power was disrupted, roiled. This was. His gaze landed on Wei Xing's face and his eyes narrowed. There was no hate on Wei Xing's face. His gaze was as clear as water. Yet Lin Qian could also see the determination in Wei Xing's eyes was stronger than before. Epiphany. He was having an epiphany at this time. Lin Qian's heart sank. When it came to their level, techniques were not the most important. They fought based on sword essence, mind, Shin power, and resolve. Each attack contained their understanding of sword essence and the laws of the world. The first person unable to withstand it would be affected in all areas by the other in mind, vision, and sound. Each of their attacks were fatal for those not in god level. But the two could understand the mysteries of each other's sword path. They both knew that trickery was useless against both themselves and the other. But they did not retreat. The rate of attack on both sides was astounding. The danger was something those not in god level could understand. Their Shin power was also used up at an astounding speed. They had absorbed all the Shin power of this Jie. The Jie started to collapse. In Lin Qian's eyes, Wei Xing became larger and larger. He was like a god of war. Each blow was filled with the power to destroy the world. Lin Qian knew that this was because his mind was infiltrated by Wei Xing's sword essence and had started to waver. The Shin power in his body was almost used up. Wei Xing became even stronger as he fought. This did not mean that Wei Xing's Shin power was stronger than Lin Qian. Wei Xing had gained a stronger and more sturdy mind. After breaking through the mental barrier, Wei Xing's mind was indestructible. The light injury Lin Qian had received earlier had been a minuscule opening, but now the opening was being gradually enlarged. Lin Qian knew that he would lose in 20 breaths. He only had one option. Leave. Flee. Lin Qian sighed inwardly. This departure would leave a deep shadow on his mind. He didn't know how much effort it would take to resolve it. For Kun Luan. Resolved flashed through Lin Qian's mind. Chapter 906, The Death of Minan. Princess Xia was nervous. She had taken leadership of the clan years ago. Under her command, the family had developed very well in these past years. While they needed to thread the razor-thin crack between the major factions, she was skilled, soft in appearance but a spirit of steel. Her resolve was hardened and she was never discouraged. All of the family respected her. She was still as beautiful as those days in Great Peace City, but her features were more mature. The sudden summons still caused her anxiety. Ocean Temple was already so strong that she needed to look up at them. The Nether King was even stronger, made her wary and feel uncertainty. She had paid attention to the war between the Nether King and the Ocean Temple in these recent days. The fighting intense, and Ocean Temple was on the losing side. Ocean Temple could not find any allies in Hundred Savage Realm. Everyone had determined it was a matter of time before the Nether King united the Mo. This person who was very likely to become the ruler of all Mo sudden had summoned her. Princess Xia didn't know whether good fortune or misfortune was waiting for her. Please enter, King has been waiting for you. A high-level Mo battle general politely ushered Princess Xia in. An Mo was out on his campaign, so he had picked a few from his guard to act as attendants. These people had followed an Mo during the 7-day miracle. They were absolutely loyal. The battle general was dazzled by Princess Xia's beauty for a moment. Did King like this type? Princess Xia focused and carefully walked into the large hall. A white-haired male seemed to be looking off into the distance. He heard Princess Xia's voice and turned around. Long time no see. Princess Xia saw that familiar yet strange face and was stunned where she stood. Her tears streamed down uncontrollably. Gongye Xiaorong was carefully hiding with his battalion. He only 1,000 people remained of his battalion. All 1,000 had followed him here. Everyone knew now that Tianhuan was gone. But no one deserted because Darren told them that they would need to earn a place for their families with their sweat and blood. Also, Darren had led them to fight Minan. If they were asked who they hated the most in the world, there was only one answer, Minan. This person had been of the highest status in Tianhuan and received countless benefits from the sect, was the cause of Tianhuan's destruction. No one would retreat from a chance to fight Minan. They silently crept closer to the battlefield. Minan battalion did not notice them. The battle between the two sides was extremely harsh. At this point, any significant reinforcements would tip the scale. Minan battalion had called back most of their scouts to focus on the harsh battle. Mu Shuang's battalions were being slowly whittled down, but this was North Tianhuan's territory. It was not difficult to have battalions reinforce them. Also, while Minan's battalion had more elite forces, they could not receive any reinforcements. Mu Shuang was a cold-blooded battle general that was sacrificing an endless stream of ordinary battalions to turn this battlefield into a meat grinder. These average battalions that usually played small roles were fearless because their enemy was Minan, the person Tianhuan hated the most. Countless people among them had their homes destroyed because of this person. The 10-year-long war between North and South Tianhuan had caused their hatred to be etched into their bones. They continued to charge in. Here, lives were just a number. More than 50,000 North Tianhuan soldiers had already fallen here. But when the news passed back to the rear, it did not cause a panic. Instead, more and more battalions flooded over. Some battalions had been preparing to leave North Tianhuan, waiting to enter Mo Cloud Sea, yet they turned back. In some battalions where their commanders were not willing to return, many soldiers left their battalions and formed small groups to come back. If even Mu Shuang Darren was willing to die with Minan, then what did their lives mean in comparison? Minan was trapped here by the cannon fodder. Many times, he thought he was about to break free, but the crazed and fearless attacks of the enemy caused the chances to be stolen away. Looking around and seeing the dispirited morale on the faces of his commanders, Minan felt cold inside. Why was it like this? He was a top battle general. His battalion was a top battalion. Why had they reached such a state? There was less than half of his battalion left. Even scarier was that deserters had started to appear since yesterday night. Minan had been lead the military for so many years, and it was the first time desertion had occurred in his battalion. He knew that this battalion that was pride was not far from total collapse. But he did not have a solution. He couldn't even retreat. If his timing in joining Kunlun hadn't been perfect, they would not have received the benefits they did. Kunlun was full of talent, and they had no room for outsiders. If he did not complete this mission successfully, what would await him upon his return would only be a cold treatment. Kunlun would not trust him any longer. His clansmen would lose everything. They would never see a bright future again. He could die, but he could not retreat. While he was willing to fight to the death, his battalion was not willing. A Tianhuan battalion fighting to the death for Kunlun? What nonsense was that? Minan was extremely discouraged. What he didn't realize was that there were 1,000 pairs of hate-filled eyes staring at him from the darkness. Gongye Xiaorong's sneak attack had been timed to perfection. Minan battalion had just began falling back to their next defensive position, yet Gongye Xiaorong attacked before they could organize. Minan battalion that had been already close to the edge of defeat instantly collapsed. Kill Minan! Kill Minan! The shouts rang over the entire camp. Minan battalion was like a group of headless flies. Many people even turned in panic and headed into the darkness. Their performance was like that of the most amateur battalion. There were no traces of a elite top battalion left. Minan seemed to age decades in a moment. He stood dazed in the wind and did not seem to hear the sounds of combat coming closer. A sharp light sliced towards his neck. He stood motionlessly like a man made out of wood. A head flew into the sky. The expression was still wooden. Bihan's Sin battalion had circled around Mu Xian battalion for hours as though they didn't know exhaustion. Mu Xian did not dare to relax at all. She knew if they were the least bit careless, Bihan would show his fangs. She continued to motivate her troops to be alert. As long as they could outlast Bihan, they would win. Time slowly passed. As time passed, Mu Xian's heart felt even colder. She could not imagine someone maintaining a random pattern like this for over 10 hours. Bihan's paths did not ever repeat, and she could not predict his next movement at all. Such a terrifying person. Mu Xian had a bad feeling. Even though she constantly reminded them, there were many of her subordinates that couldn't help but get distracted. Bihan's attack happened suddenly without any warning. Bihan was like an épée blade that instantly pierced into a corner of Mu Xian battalion. In that moment, blood sprayed and limbs flew. Many people hadn't even managed to refocus when the god of death had snuffed their lives out. One attack and then a retreat. Before Mu Xian could counterattack, Sin battalion had fled like lightning and returned to their roaming state. This battalion was all made up of female sword xiu. While each of them were experienced in battle, they were still females. The sudden bloody scene caused their faces to change expression. They did not fear death or battle, but they were repulsed by such a bloody scene, especially when it happened next to them. This time, no one dared to relax. All of them were on their guard. Bihan once again resumed his seemingly sleepy state. He led Sin battalion to roam randomly around Mu Xian battalion. Night came. Mu Xian's heart was nervous again. She felt great panic, yet no matter how she tried, she could not get in contact with Minan and Xuedong. Had something happened to them? Mu Xian suddenly had a bad feeling. She looked down on people like Minan. If someone had betrayed Kunlun, she would be the first to cut their head off. If the sect leader hadn't asked for them to be polite, Mu Xian would not have shown Minan any politeness. Mu Xian was not the only one. All of Kunlun had a terrible opinion of Minan. The unity of Kunlun was something that people found it hard to imagine. Due to this they looked down and disdained a person like me Nan that had betrayed his sect after receiving countless privileges. But Xue Dong. Who could stop Xue Dong? She didn't believe it. But up until now, she still couldn't see any sign of Xue Dong battalion. Even scarier was that she couldn't get into contact with Xue Dong. Xue Dong battalion was Kunlun's strongest battalion. Xue Dong's status in Kunlun was one unmatched by any other battle general. Due to this, Xue Dong battalion had recruited almost all of the best of Kunlun. The over half of the children of Kunlun were in Xue Dong battalion. Every sword xiu in the battalion had passed through 6 rounds of exams and selection. Each one was powerful. Xue Dong had peerless skill. Adding on the battalion sword xiu that had been chosen those successive rounds of selection, the countless experts, the harsh training, Mu Xian believed that there was no other battalion like Xue Dong battalion. Even Gu Liangdao, who was famed in the world, had been badly defeated when he encountered Xue Dong. Who would defeat such a battalion? Mu Xian didn't believe it. While Bihan was strong and Xin battalion was more powerful than expected, she believed if Xue Dong came then Bihan would not have a chance at all. But, what trouble had Xue Dong encountered? The bad feeling increased. The mission this time had been rocky everywhere. The conflict between Kunlun and Mo Cloud Sea could not be avoided. It was time for the two to grapple. Yet unlike the unstoppable victories she had imagined, she felt as though they were encountering obstacles everywhere. Her defeat to Gongye Xiaorong's counterattack had been due to her own carelessness, but she had not held anything back in her battle against Xin battalion and she was still being suppressed. Bihan was stronger than she imagined, and she had a feeling that Bihan was still not using all of his strength. Was this Mo Cloud Sea's true power? Chapter 907, The Dawn is Near. Yang Yuanhao looked at the message on his hand. Frozen like a statue, he stood motionless for a while. He felt shock that Gu Liangdao had died in combat. Before they had acted, no one had thought that full-out war between Kunlun and Mo Cloud Sea would start like this. Even now, he was slightly dazed. An arrow that left the bow could not turn back. Even if he could go back, he did not have many choices. He believed that Gu Liangdao would make the same choices. Kunlun, haha. Pity. Gu Liangdao died. His situation was extremely similar to Gu Liangdao's. The only difference was that Gu Liangdao had been given more responsibilities. While Yang Yuanhao was the sword and shield for the 4 minor Diana sects, there were still people above him shielding him from the wind and rain of internal politics. But Gu Liangdao didn't have anyone to support him. He didn't from the beginning. He betrayed Shixian, afterwards he became the leader of Shixian with Zhong De's support, but lost that support in the Battle of the Central Plains. But he wasn't Suemo. As a battle general, Gu Liangdao was outstanding. He had both the bravery and the cleverness. His defeat to Xue Dong was more a defeat to Kunlun than to Xue Dong. From the start, Gu Liangdao had been burdened with too many responsibilities. He had no choices and no escape. For example, betraying Shixian. If he was not forced to the precipice, who was willing to betray their sect? Just like that, he became the leader of an area. Yang Yuanhao felt that those things were the true burden that had crushed this spirit as a top battle general. Not every person was Suemo. Yang Yuanhao thought of the phrase again. Yang Yuanhao had a clear measure of himself just like his combat style. He would also make the rational choice. It might not be the best, but it would never be the worst. Yang Yuanhao did not charge blindly into Kunlun. While the battalions stationed here were not a match for him, he did not feel it was rational to enter too deeply. He would lack both supplies and reinforcements. The strategic value he could produce here would be limited, but there would be little danger. The present situation was unlike in the past. Mo Cloud Sea and Kunlun had started an all-out war. He needed to reconsider the situation. Zuemo had not returned, Gongsun Cha and Bihan were mobilized. Now, he needed to think for himself. When Wei Xing's message came, he almost didn't believe it. He looked dazedly at it for a long time. Wei Sheng had defeated Lin Qian. Lin Qian had ran away. This. The result of any battle at the front lines, even Gong Sun Cha defeating Xue Dong, would not give Yang Yuanhao a deeper shock than this news. Illogical. It was illogical. That was Lin Qian. The sect leader of Kunlun, Lin Qian. After a long days, Yang Yuanhao started to recover. He started to think of the effect this matter would produce. He had to admit that this news was an enormous blow to the morale of Kunlun. Lin Qian's status in Kunlun was unparalleled. He was publicly thought to be the most outstanding of all the sect leaders in Kunlun's history. Even in this revolutionary era, he was flawless. Kunlun had been constantly strengthening themselves. If one had to talk about his only mistake, it would have been not having stopped Mo Cloud C from developing. But who could have stopped Mo Cloud C? Lin Qian was the manifestation of perfection. He was humble and refined, his loyalty towards Kunlun deeply engraved into his bones. Even the most rebellious sect disciples listened to his every word. He had ventured deep into the Mo realms and defeated them all with his own power. He had been the one to comprehend Shen power and lead Kunlun into the era of Shen power. He had brought great change to Kunlun, using Chao Xin and the other young disciples. Kunlun became the only one of the four great sects to have not declined and fractured. He had never been defeated, he led the group, he was a born leader. But a person like this had been defeated. Yang Yuanhao suddenly realized that Kunlun was pushed to the edge of the cliff. He had never expected Lin Qian's defeat. The war between Kunlun and Mo Cloud C had just started and the situation had changed unexpectedly. In Yang Yuanhao's eyes, Lin Qian was undoubtedly Kunlun's strongest point, and also the one that could not fail at all. Even though Wei Sheng and the others had returned, Yang Yuanhao had felt it would be good if they could match Lin Qian. Defeating Mu Xian or Xue Dong would not shake the foundations of Kunlun. Only the defeat of Lin Qian would truly cause Kunlun to panic. Lin Qian had been defeated. Kunlun was in danger. Yet the development of events still surprised Yang Yuanhao's predictions. The news that Lin Qian had been defeated Wei Sheng shook the world. Yang Yuanhao had not spread the news. Wei Sheng had not been able to track down Lin Qian and decided to go to Kunlun. Wei Sheng raced forth with his sword and attacked Kunlun. He did not conceal himself or sneak in. He moved towards the main peak of Tianhuan in broad daylight. Everywhere he passed, he razed cities when he encountered them, he killed enemies when he encountered them, no one could stop him. Kunlun's battalions and experts flooded towards Wei Sheng, yet no one could stop them. No one withstood even one of his attacks. Wei Sheng used his sword to tell the world how strong a god level was. All of the world was astounded by Wei Sheng's strength and unreasonableness. Kunlun panicked. Just like Yang Yuanhao had expected, Lin Qian's defeat caused all of Kunlun to feel anxious. Wei Sheng's actions seemed to poke the hornet's nest. All of Kunlun's battalions and experts furiously raced to reinforce the main peak of Kunlun. The main mountain peak of Kunlun was the core of Kunlun. This was where the core of Kunlun was at, this was the holy land for the people of Kunlun. It held unparalleled status, and it had never experienced the fires of war. It was the greatest pride for all of Kunlun. Protect the main peak. Protect the sect leader. Like moths to a flame, they fearlessly charged and tried to stop Wei Sheng. Kunlun went mad. The world went mad. Xue Dong's eyes were bloodshot. He completely ignored Vermilion Bird Camp that was following closely after him. He did not care so much. Eldest Shixiang had been defeated. How was it possible? When he had received the news, he almost laughed. How could eldest Shixiang be defeated? He had been in the midst of enjoying his battle with Gongsun Cha. The two were evenly matched. Yet, not long after starting, the news that Wei Sheng was making his way to the main peak of Kunlun arrived, he finally understood. Eldest Shixiang had really been defeated. Xue Dong did not hesitate. He immediately led his battalion to charge back towards Kunlun. He felt as though he was in a nightmare. Suddenly, Kunlun was placed in such a precarious position. Protect the main peak. Protect the sect leader. It could be seen how badly Kunlun's position was from this kind of slogan. Mu Xian was trapped by Bihan's Xin battalion and was unable to leave. But he still ordered Mu Xian to return to Kunlun no matter the price. Even if she died. Xue Dong's mind was unusually clear at the moment. Everyone in Kunlun could be sacrificed, even himself. Only eldest Shixiang could not die. He had already started to consider the problem of defeat. The situation was even more urgent, but he became even calmer. Defeat was not something to be scared of. As long as eldest Shixiang was not dead, even if they lost some territory, they could reverse this situation eventually. No matter what the price, they had to stop Wei Sheng. Xue Dong battalion traveled as though they did not care for their lives. They truly didn't. They quickly left Vermilion Bird Camp in the dust. Compared to Kunlun's panic, Mo Cloud Sea was overjoyed. Teacher Wei is too strong. He was able to defeat Lin Qian. Heavens! Teacher Wei really returned at the best time. I just knew that Teacher Wei was God level. Please, you only knew after the fact. Just with his own power, he made his way onto the main peak of Kunlun. I can feel my blood boil just thinking about it. Gong Sun Cha also had a faint smile on his face. His fight with Xue Dong had been interrupted in the probing stage. Both sides seemed to know that this was not the time for their final fight, so they did not use all of their strength. But in the probing attacks, both sides found the other side troublesome. Gong Sun Cha still gaped when he learned Wei Shen was making his way in such an astounding and domineering manner to Kunlun's main peak. The terrifying power of a god level was completely displayed in this battle. Wei Shen managed to disrupt all of Kunlun by himself. Gong Sun Cha and the others quickly recovered from their joy. People immediately started to discuss strategies on how to face god level. After half a day of discussion, they arrived at the same conclusion as before. Only a god-level expert could match a god-level expert. Otherwise, they would need to wait 10 more years after everyone's average strength went up 2 more ranks. Top-level battalions might have the power to match a god level. The discussion was fruitless and the discussion turned to discussing the good chance in front of them. If they missed such a great opportunity, they were asking to be struck by lightning. For these people who were full of deviousness, this topic was like the greatest feast. Everyone immediately started a heated discussion. Evil malicious plans quickly took form. When Zuo received the news Wei Sheng defeated Lin Qian, he was also astounded. But soon, the details came and his happiness was diluted. Gu Yangdao was dead. Shuang Yu was dead. The spirited and open Gu Yangdao, the gentle and pure Shuang Yu. Thinking of how they had met and interacted those years ago, Zuo spirits were low. He had thought that everyone would drink together after he returned to Mo Cloud Sea. That would have been a happy occasion. He hadn't expected. Zuo looked motionlessly at the night sky. Ague looked with worry at Zuo. She didn't speak. She knew that young master needed silence at this time. A long time later, Zuo regained his composure and pushed aside his sorrow and grief. There was a line of light on the horizon. Without realizing it, the night had passed, the dawn was near. The dawn was near. The last remnants of grief and sorrow were swept out of Zuo's eyes. What replaced them was determination. He turned around and suddenly said to Ague, we need to end this war as soon as possible. Ague looked at Zuo's determined face, and her gaze moved across his snowy white hair. She felt a pain in her heart and then she nodded seriously, yes. Zuo's gaze turned gentle and warm as he stared at Ague. But soon, he became steely-eyed again as though the mountains of blades and seas of fire in front of him could not stop his steps. The framework for 100 Savage Realms command structure had been built. Princess Xia and the Lan brothers were familiarizing themselves with their work. The effect of recruiting Princess Xia and the others was outstanding. The regions of 100 Savage Realm that Zhua Mo had conquered quickly stabilized. Everything has been arranged. It's time to take care of the Mo Shin Temple. Chapter 908, The Chief Mo God's Madness. The atmosphere inside the Mo Shin Temple was extremely tense. The front lines had not experienced continuous defeats and they had won a few battles, but there was no joy on the faces of the Mo gods. Mo's army was moving steadily and pushing into their territory. Liang Wei and Qi Xian had not made any risky moves. They only continued to add pressure and press on their holdings. Piece by piece, step by step. This phrase described it best. But the Mo gods were not idiots. They knew that their situation was becoming more and more dangerous. While the enemy's advance was slow, it did not give them any chances to fight back. The enemy was wary as though they were the weaker side. This kind of fighting strategy all of the Mo Shin Temple great pain. They could only watch as the enemy slowly marched on them, yet they couldn't do a thing. As the enemy army pushed, their defense line was gradually pushed flat. This was a dangerous sign. A flattened defense line meant that it was easier for the other to break through and bypass their forces. Any battle general knew how dangerous this was. But they had no solutions. They could only watch as they slid towards the cliff edge. Panic and hopelessness spread uncontrollably in their hearts. The difference in power between them was too great. How about we assemble a counterattack? Yoshi-Yaku glanced at the chief Mo god and asked probingly. The chief Mo god was silent and felt extremely bitter. Counterattack? What could they use to counterattack? The others' battalions did not have any weaknesses. Reinforcing the defense line was a prolonging the inevitable, a slow suicide, but if they charged out, they would not come back. The chief Mo god's eyes swept dazedly across the hall. Compared to the past, the present Mo Shin Temple was magnificent, but it was cold and unpopulated at this time. Was this the sign of their defeat? He thought of his hard work over the past years. Through the battles, the Mo Shin Temple had grown and became the strongest factions in the 100 Savage Realm. This had filled the chief Mo god with pride. He had once believed that the Mo Shin Temple could not be defeated. Yet when the Nether King's armies came, he found that the seemingly strong Mo Shin Temple could not stop the others' advance. The enemy was too strong. Compared to the Nether King, the Mo Shin Temple was too weak. The difference between the two was like that of an adult and a child. It was an uncrossable gap. The Mo Shin Temple had fought back heartily. Even the chief Mo god could not ask for more from his subordinates. The rule of the Mo Shin Temple had been popular in their lands. The Nether King has come. The chief Mo god suddenly spoke. His voice was hoarse. Yes. Yoshi-Yaku nodded. He recruited Princess Xia and the Lan brothers to manage his territories in 100 Savage Realm. This move is beautiful. These two families both have long histories and large networks in 100 Savage Realm. With them in control, the people's hearts are reassured. He shrugged and spread his hands. He said with an expression of helplessness. Of course, it is even more detrimental to us. Fourth, what do you think? The chief Mo god looked at the fourth Mo god that had been silent for a long time. The fourth Mo god was not tall, and looked weak in physical. He had slightly messy hair and a pale face. He looked delicate without any of the power of the Mo. No one would underestimate him due to his appearance. He came from a famous family. The succession of the Silver Catalpa Cavern. This had been recorded in the ancient histories. He was even more mysterious in people's eyes. His name was Shui Yu. Chief Elder had spent great effort to recruit Shui Yu to the Mo Shin Temple to become the fourth Mo god. He wasn't just strong, he was an outstanding battle general. This was also why the chief Mo god thought so greatly of him. In many records, they said that the successors of the Water Moon family also inherited the knowledge of the ancient battle generals. Shui Yu had not disappointed the chief Mo god and he had been responsible in large part for the expansion of the Mo Shin Temple over the past few years. Shui Yu was quiet, and never made trouble. He also had the skills. No one would dislike a subordinate like him. The final battle is here. Shui Yu was as calm as usual. He said peacefully, the enemy is about to start a full-out attack. The hall was completely silent. A moment later, the chief Mo god finally spoke with difficulty. What is the possibility we can hold out? 1 in 10th. Shui Yu was still calm. Yoshi-Yaku sighed. While he did not care as much as the others, he still felt extremely discomforted by the feeling of helplessness due to the difference in power. What if we use everyone in the Emotion Temple? The chief Mo god suddenly gritted out a question. We have already mobilized everyone. Yoshi-Yaku unconsciously answered, but then he reacted. He was stunned at the realization. He looked at the chief Mo god with shock on his face. A hint of blood rose in the chief Mo god's face. His eyes were like twin balls of fire. No, we will conscript everyone. All the families in the Emotion Temple, every Mo that cultivates Shin power, no matter the gender, they will be on the battlefield. We can make an army that is 10, 20 times bigger than the Nether King's army. Everyone was frightened by the chief Mo god's mad suggestion. But after the war finished, the Emotion Temple's lands would be desolate. A war like that had never occurred before, not even in the wars between the Yaoma and the Shou. This was using bodies to fill the hole. Yes. Only that. We will turn the Emotion Temple into a hell. A hell that will pull the Nether King down. The chief Mo god howled at the top of his lungs. He waved his arms wildly as though his body had been flooded with fighting spirit again. Everyone became silent. If the fighting really reached a level, the fatalities would be astounding. All of the Mo would be reduced. This is only an internal conflict of the Mo, we are all Mo. Yoshi-Yaku couldn't help but say. While he came from the Emotion Temple and didn't feel anything for the Nether King, but the damage this would do to the Mo. The chief Mo god suddenly turned and glared as though his eyes would sprout fire. He shouted, "Shut up! Yoshi-Yaku, starting today, Yoshi Battalion will be led by 2nd. Yoshi-Yaku's face turned ashen, but then uncontrolled fury flooded his face. He laughed coldly, "Ha! You have gone mad." Chief Elder's face filled with murderousness. "What? You want to kill me?" Yoshi-Yaku held his head proudly, but his gaze was icy. "Come on." Finishing, he didn't even look at the chief Mo god as he turned and left the hall. The chief Mo god's face was black and his temples throbbed. He forced himself to resist. He knew that if he attacked Yoshi-Yaku now, the Emotion Temple would split. Who else has opinions? Chief Mo god had a dark expression. The others were silent. Chief Mo god's expression eased slightly. He felt better that the other people did not resist his decision. He relaxed his tone. I know that the fatalities will be high, but this is our only chance at victory. We will have to disregard the cost. We need to let the Nether King feel that the Emotion Temple has the determination to fight to the end. The mad voice of the chief Mo god echoed in the hall. Shui Yu's residence. Wu-Lu drank back a few swigs of strong liquor. He seemed to be extremely thirsty. He allowed the liquor to flow down his mouth and neck. He only put down the liquor jar when a flush appeared on his face. He murmured to himself, Yoshi-Yaku is right, boss has gone mad. Shui Yu had a small bottle and cup in front of him. He poured a small amount and slowly sipped it with a leisurely air. The two were both Mo gods who had been promoted after the first 3, and this made them closer. I'm not one to lead troops. Wu-Lu gulped another mouthful and shook his head. But I know that doing this is like drinking poison to satisfy thirst. Right now, we still have the hearts of the people. But if we conscript that time, we will lose the hearts of the people. He has too much pressure on him, Shui Yu said neutrally. No matter what, he cannot do this. Wu-Lu showed his disappointment. Pity, I'm just a step away from God level. If I was strong as Wei Sheng, our situation will be much better. You have done well, Shui Yu comforted. Ever since the last battle between Wu Lu and Wei Sheng, Wu Lu had worked hard. He was the fifth Mo god, but he was the strongest of the Mo gods in terms of individual power. Chief Mo god had once urged Wu Lu to study to be a battle general. With such strong individual power, even if he was slightly less skilled as a battle general, he would be much stronger than most battle generals. Yet Wu Lu had no interest in becoming a battle general. His entire mind was focused on cultivation. Wu Lu took another mouthful of liquor and lamented, 10 years ago, I was defeated by Wei Sheng. 10 years later and not only have I not caught up, I am left even further behind. I can only feel admiration. This kind of man is the one we should model ourselves after. 10 years ago, everyone said Wei Sheng was dead, I laughed at that. How could a man like that die so easily? Shui Yu listened silently. He knew that Wu Lu only wanted to find someone to vent to. Even Lin Qian was defeated by Wei Sheng. I don't like Lin Qian, but he is a true genius. Yu, what do you think, why is the world changing so quickly? Wu Le's eyes were blurry and filled with bewilderment. A Nether King suddenly popped up. He made trouble in Netherrealm, but that wasn't enough, so he came over to unite the Mo Ha. How sorry has he made us all? Now Mo Cloud Sea and Kunlun are fighting. Wei Sheng that wasn't been seen for 10 years is now god level and managed to frighten Lin Qian to hiding. Kunlun has lost great face. Lin Qian is really sad. They are both god level, such a great humiliation, this world, what is going on, don't understand. As Wu Lu spoke, his words became indistinct. He fell forward on his face and started to snore. He was extremely depressed and only came to Shui Yu's place to get drunk. Shui Yu sat as he slowly sipped. The harsh liquor was like fire in his throat. Flame started to burn in that pair of eyes that seemed to always be calm. He thought of the blood summons from the past, thought of his confusion in the past 10 years as he waited, thought of how he had asked himself every night, thought of many things. He seemed to speak to himself. Because a planted seed will grow into a great tree. Chapter 909, Sword God Wei Sheng. Mu Xian's situation was terrible. She had underestimated Bihan. Her battalion had received a high number of fatalities. She did not feel any dissatisfaction. Bihan was stronger than she was. She accepted the losses. But when she received Xue Dong's flying sword letter, she was stunned. Sect leader had been defeated. Sect leader had been defeated? How was it possible? Mu Xian's first reaction was one of disbelief, but it was Xue Dong had sent this message. She quickly accepted that this was the truth. Mu Xian immediately realized this was an unprecedented danger. Wei Sheng was fighting his way to the main peak of Kunlun. If he truly made it onto Kunlun's main peak, then a calamity would descend on Kunlun. The peerless Kunlun had never been humiliated like that before. Damn it! Mu Xian wanted to grow wings and fly back to Kunlun, yet Bihan would not let them escape. If Mu Xian showed any opening, he would take a bite. Bihan was like a wolf, cunning and ruthless. Mu Xian battalion was heavily wounded. In a short span of a few days, more than 1,000 people fell under the fangs of Bihan's Sin battalion. Worse was that a similar amount of people were injured. More off, Mu Xian knew that Bihan had deliberately left many with just injuries. Injuries had a greater impact on morale and reduced their mobility. Mu Xian battalion's morale was unprecedentedly low after 2 successive losses. Mu Xian knew that she could not beat Bihan in conditions like this. Right now, she was considering how to get back to Kunlun as fast as possible. Kunlun had been forced into a precarious predicament. The situation reversed so suddenly that even Mu Xian felt clueless. However, Bihan seemed to guess her intentions. He continued to hound and harry them with little fear of retaliation. For the first time, Mu Xian felt powerless. What should she do? Darren. Mu Xian's second in command interrupted her thoughts. Mu Xian raised her head. Let this subordinate take command of the rear. Her second-in-command spoke. She had a calm expression as though she was just describing a normal matter. Mu Xian's heart shook. She looked at this partner that had followed her for over a decade. The other's gaze was determined. The two had grown up together from childhood, and were like sisters. For Kun Luan. Her sister-in-arms tone was serious and determined. After staring for a long moment, Mu Xian suppressed the grief she felt. Closing her eyes, she used her last shred of will to say, "For Kun Luan." The second-in-command showed a gentle smile, turned and then left. Mu Xian's tears flowed down. The sorrowful atmosphere filled the battalion. Everyone understood the decision of the higher-ups. The 1,000 injured members and 2,000 sword shio were selected to stay behind. They would use their lives to delay Bihan. The cold wind cut like a blade. For Kun Luan. Wei Xing flew holding his sword. His expression was solemn. Everywhere he passed, the sky and the ground seemed to be dyed by blood. The god-killing blood sword seemed to have been filled with blood, and its killing intent filled the sky. Wei Xing's gaze was clear and determined. He could not count how many people he had killed in the past days. The sword shio of Kun Luan leapt fearlessly towards him like a flood. Their strength was not worth mentioning, but their resolve caused him to change expression. But it only amounted to this. Wei Xing's heart was like a stone. The sword oath he had given in the past echoed in his mind. He would not rest against Kun Luan, this would only end with death. To stop him, Kun Luan destroyed all the transportation formations along the way. However, this was not of any effect against Wei Xing. God-level experts could travel through the void. When the Kun Luan mountain range entered his view, even Wei Xing was awed by its vastness and majesty. Mountain peaks numbering in the tens of thousands like an endless forest of swords that stretched out. Each mountain peak was like a flying sword. They had different appearances and different auras. Some were steep, others vast plateaus, others covered in glaciers, or flowing with lava. Even Wei Xing, who had been to so many places, was seeing such a unique place for the first time. As expected, Kun Luan was blessed. Wei Xing lamented inside as his gaze landed on the main peak of Kun Luan. The main peak of Kun Luan was the most attention-catching of the tens of thousands because of its height and size. Kun Luan's main peak was unrivaled as it towered over the others. All other mountains were like molehills next to it. It was much higher and wider than the other peaks. It was like an enormous sword pointing towards the firmament. Peerless Kun Luan. The layers of Jinji suddenly appeared. It added a beautiful layer of silk to the main peak that flashed with dazzlingly light under the sunlight. Was this Kun Luan? Wei Xing's eyes suddenly became bright. While the main peak of Kun Luan had soul-shaking presence, the image in his mind was the little unknown and remote Wukong mountain. It was not vast, it did not have any astounding power, it was not revered by countless people. But that mountain was the most important mountain in his heart. In the name of Wukong. Wei Xing took a deep breath. His eyes were full of resolve as he raised the god-killing blood sword. He's here. Wei Xing. The main peak of Kun Luan shifted with people. All of the mountain peaks in Kun Luan's mountain range were full of people. Countless Kun Luan disciples had came from all over. For Kun Luan. Someone shouted. Almost everyone raised their flying sword and shouted, "For Kun Luan! For Kun Luan!" The thunderous shouts echoed in the air, in the mountains, in the hearts of every Kun Luan disciple. Kill! Kill! Countless shadows flew up from Kun Luan's mountain range to cover the sky. They were like a burning sea of flames that wanted to use the fire of their life to burn that terrifying figure. Their faces were filled with fearlessness. Yet, unexpectedly, that person in the distance did not charge over. For some unknown reason, many people sighed in relief. But at this time, Wei Xing suddenly raised the sword in his hand. Everyone stilled. Even the Kun Luan disciples that were charging towards Wei Xing paused. What did he want to do? Wei Xing was over 150 li away from the main peak of Kun Luan. If they hadn't set up seal formation, they would not have been able to see Wei Xing's figure. Was this a challenge? What was the use in raising the sword from so far away? Yet before they could understand, a red sword energy flew out of Wei Xing's sword. That red sword energy was not blinding and did not look as though it was astounding in any aspect. But that seemingly ordinary energy cut the space in front of them as though it traveled through the void. The sword energy brought with it an endless ocean of blood. The surging waves of blood rose up like monsters opening their mouths and leading at them. These Kunlun disciples were swallowed by the surging waves of blood before they could react. The waves of blood did not stop. They became even stronger and charged towards the main peak at an even faster speed. The vast distance did not seem to matter. Almost instantly, the surging blood-red waves carrying savage power and steel resolve smashed onto the main peak of Kunlun. Boom! The Jinji of the main peak was like paper. Shattered energies of various colors flew through the air and then were consumed by the bloody waves. The layers of Jinji that Kunlun had worked to set up over the generations didn't even last for a breath before turning into dust. The waves that crushed all obstructions slammed into the main peak of Kunlun. Boom! Time seemed to stop in this moment. Everyone's expressions were dazed. Their minds having gone completely blank. The vast Kunlun main peak slowly collapsed before their eyes. Boom boom boom. The main peak was so large that when it fell, shattered stone and dust rose up into an enormous mushroom cloud. The roar caused all of Kunlun mountain range to shudder. A deathly silence. It was completely silent. Everyone had ashen faces. Their lips trembled. Their expressions were dazed. The main peak had been cut down in one stroke. All of the Kunlun disciples had pale faces. Something seemed to collapse in their minds. The grieving screams contained the deepest of hopelessness. Wei Xing had charged into Kunlun and cut down Kunlun's mountain peak. This astounding news swept the world like a gust of wind. Nothing was more astounding than this. Kunlun, the strongest hegemon of the world, had been defeated by one person. Wei Xing had struck down the main peak of Kunlun. Everyone that heard the news would be dazed for a while. People already felt that Lin Qian's defeat was incomprehensible. This event could not be described. Kunlun had been the strongest sect of the world for thousands of years, the strongest faction in the world. No sect could match Kunlun. Peerless Kunlun. Kunlun had not coined the phrase. The authority that Kunlun had accumulated over thousands of years was imprinted on people's minds. The disciples of Kunlun were always proud. Everyone thought they deserved to be proud. This was a pride that was matter of fact because they came from Kunlun. They were always full of spirit and confidence. They were forever the most outstanding youths, the strongest sword show. They were the future rulers of the world both in the eyes of others, and they believed this in their hearts. Kunlun was the holy ground of sword show. They created the cultivation path for the powerful sword show and developed it. The sword show became the strongest offensive fighters of all the shoja. Yet this holy land for sword show was brought to its knees by a sword show from a previously unknown sect. For any sect, this wasn't just a great humiliation, it wounded them at their foundation. When a sword show heard the news, they could not speak. In their hearts, something seemed to silently collapse in their minds. Kunlun would never be the peerless Kunlun ever again. The collapsed main peak and Kunlun's peerless reputation became the perfect adornment for one person. There would be no argument in the future about the name of the sword god Wei Xing. Peerless Sword God. Chapter 910, Lin Qian's sword Wei Xing cutting the main peak of Kunlun was so astounding at the news that Mo Shan Temple had surrendered to the Nether King paled in comparison. However, the Mo were an exception. The eyes of all Mo were on the army of the Nether King army in Hundred Savage Realm. The enmity the Mo of Hundred Savage Realm felt towards the Nether King had been diminished greatly. The power of Wei Xing's campaign against Kunlun caused the Mo to reconsider the status of a god-level expert. Even an existence as strong as Kunlun was forced to such desperate straits by Wei Sheng. God level, that is the true peak of this world. A faction that did not a god level would be fated to be undefeated. Among the MO, there was only one god level, the Nether King. This caused the enmity from many of the MO to fade, and instead they felt slightly reassured. The MO had their own god level. Many people started to hope for the arrival of peace. The Nether King was undoubtedly the one most qualified to unite the MO. The MO Shin Temple's inner conflict and the subsequent coup was supposedly due to the chief MO god's decision to conscript and sacrifice the populace. Not many were too surprised by this. In the eyes of many people, the MO Shin Temple was already hard-pressed to have held until now under such great pressure. After the initial shock, all of the MO entered celebration. The MO were united. After thousands of years, the MO finally been reunited. In the history of the MO, every time the MO were united, that was the beginning of a golden age of prosperity. They had enough reason to believe that the MO were going to welcome a completely new future. The King of Mo. The chief MO god was killed. The rhinoceros MO god was not willing to continue in the new regime. He left the MO Shin Temple and returned to his homeland to be the clan leader. The MO Shin Temple still had the Yoshi Battalion and Shui Yu Battalion. Wu Lu became the new bodyguard for the king. The other management positions were appointed by the new king. The top 4 battalions of the MO quickly took form. Liang Weiss King's Horn became the first of the MO battalions. The other 3 battalions were Chi Weiss Chi Battalion, Yoshi Yakes Yoshi Battalion, and Shui Yu's Shui Yu Battalion. An MO was deputized as the first MO commander in command. The only unexpected appointment was Zhu Nanyu. She became the first advisor to An Mo's strategic group. Due to Zhuo Mo having already built up the framework with Princess Xia and the Lan brothers, everything progressed smoothly. Mu Shi Darren, your residence has been arranged. Please follow me. A male shadow guard dressed in black respectfully bowed and then led the way at the front. Please. Mu Shi nodded and followed behind with her guards. You are too polite. This shadow guard respectfully answered. The guards around Mu Su had unnatural and cautious expressions. These veterans of the battlefield and in death felt uneasy in front of these shadow guards. The Shadow Guard was an extremely powerful organization and was Ming Yu Yi Darren's the most trusted and sharpest blade. These 2 years were better. In the years before that, it was these people hidden in the shadows that had brought down and assassinated Ming Yu Yi Darren's enemies. In this unprecedented purge of the Yao ranks, the one that had been the most effective was the Shadow Guard. Mu Shi noticed the uneasiness of her guards. She didn't like the Shadow Guard either, but she didn't want to offend them. The Shadow Guard wasn't just the strongest intelligence network, they were also Ming Yu Yi Darren's most trusted protectors. Their leader, Yu Qinlai, was also very trusted by Ming Yu Yi Darren. Battle generals innately disliked these assassins hidden in the darkness. People had more than once expressed concerns about the Shadow Guard's accumulated power. The only thing to rejoice about was that Yu Qinlai never entered any power struggles, and maintained respect towards the other Darren. However, people were still worried about Yu Qinlai's cruel actions. Mu Shi refocused and asked, has Bin Lan Darren arrived? Bin Lan Darren arrived yesterday night. Mu Shi knew why Darren had summoned them all back for. The changes in the world affairs had been too drastic in this recent while. Kunlun and Mo Cloud Sea had started their war, Lin Qian had lost, the main peak of Kunlun had been cut down, and Kunlun had entered unprecedented danger. Mu Shi and the others were astounded. They knew just how powerful Kunlun was. But before one wave settled, another started. The Mo Shin Temple suddenly had internal conflict and 3 remaining Mo gods surrendered to the Nether King. The Mo had united. This caused the Yao to suddenly feel great danger. No one would doubt the strength of a united Mo race. Each time the Mo were united, it was when they were strongest, and also when their desire to expand was greatest. The 2 titans of the Xiuzhou world were fighting intensely. That Nether King wasn't stupid and he wouldn't participate. The Mo only had one direction to expand in. The Yao lands. In the past thousands of years, the Yao Ma had maintained a good relationship. Usually, the Yao did not need to worry about the fractionalized Mo. However, now, the Mo had a new king. This Mo king was of mysterious and unknown origins. However, his intentions were revealed immediately after he ascended to the throne. He led a powerful invasion of 100 savage realm and rapidly united the Mo. The strong expansionist stance that the new Mo king displayed worried the Yao. Mu Shi was not stupid. The Yao and the Mo were on good relations because the Yao Ma had the same enemies. But right now that the Xiuzhou were fighting among themselves, and the Mo were strong while the Yao weak. Would the Mo overlook this opportunity to swallow the Yao? Mu Shi was also filled with worries. The meeting was of the highest levels. Almost all the higher-ups of the Yao were gathered together. The Yao were in a nervous atmosphere. This meeting would decide the fate of the Yao. Bihan looked at the thick smoke above the burning city and turned to lead Xin battalion to leave without any hesitation. This was the 9th major hub city that he had raised. Other than the battalions on the borders of Kunlun that didn't dare to move, almost all the other battalions in Kunlun had returned to reinforce the main peak of Kunlun. Lin Qian was not present, Shui Dong was not here, all of Kunlun was in chaos. They could only respond based on their instincts. But how could the weakly supported border hold against Gongsun Cha, Bihan, and Yang Yuanhao? The 3 battalions broke through with little effort. The vast and empty Kunlun was spread in front of them. Gongsun Cha and the others did not choose to conquer the territory. Kunlun's rule in these lands was deeply entrenched over thousands of years. The factions of various sizes here were fighting back, and once Mo Cloud Sea tried to conquer these places, Mo Cloud Sea's battalions would be tangled up in intensifying rebellions. Therefore, the strategy Gongsun Cha and the others planned was simple and brutal. Constant damage to Kunlun's production capabilities and infrastructure. Everywhere they passed, they didn't conquer, they destroyed. This kind of destruction would not be immediately fatal for Kunlun, but it was akin 1,000 wounds on Kunlun's enormous body. The bleeding would continue and Kunlun would only become weaker with time. Following behind the 3 top battalions were the first-class battalions like Ma Fan and Tang Fei. Gongsun Cha knew that a chance like this would not occur again. He did not keep anything back. All of the first-class battalions and elite battalions were mobilized. They followed the 3 top battalions to enter the vast core of Kunlun. Time. What was most important was time. Gongsun Cha commanded that all battalions had to leave Kunlun within 10 days. The Jingji forts were being built day and night on the borders of Mo Cloud Sea. Kunlun, who had suffered so much loss, was very likely to retaliate. In these weeks, Kunlun's sky was covered in smoke. The sect leader had been defeated, the main peak cut down, countless cities burned to ashes. Kunlun seemed to reach the end of the road in the span of one night. By the time the people of Kunlun reacted, Mo Cloud Sea's battalions had disappeared. Seeing Kunlun covered in wounds, everyone cried. Lin Qian wanted to die. Kunlun was wailing after being trampled under the hooves of Mo Cloud Sea. Kunlun had fallen under Wei Xing's sword. But at this time, he could not come out, he could not fight for his beloved Kunlun, he could only stay in this hidden cavern and heal. Lin Qian held the immemorial sword tightly. His handsome face was unusually pale. In just a few dozen days, he had thinned by a size. His bloodless lips moved, tears flowed out of his empty eyes and fell down his face. Master, sorry. Sorry. All of his pride had been completely destroyed. Kunlun was his all, he lived for Kunlun, he would forever live for Kunlun. If he hadn't been defeated, the state of affairs would not be so bad, the main peak would not have been destroyed, Kunlun would not have lost so, and Kunlun would not have been humiliated. I am a criminal. The criminal of Kunlun. He said to himself as though he was proclaiming judgment on himself. He stood up. A light suddenly appeared in his empty eyes. The light grew brighter and filled his eyes. His wooden head slowly started to turn. He sat silently. The excitement and madness in his eyes slowly grew. An indescribable determination was in his eyes and flowed in his body. The immemorial Shen sword in his hand hummed and he felt an indescribable understanding. His sword was Kun Luan. Not for heaven or earth, not for the laws, not for the people, only for Kun Luan. This body belonged to Kun Luan, this sword belonged to Kun Luan. All the laws of the world were below Kun Luan, all the emotions of the world were below Kun Luan. This was his sword, Kun Luan above all. The energies in Lin Qian's body suddenly flowed and circulated. Half of his injuries healed. His sword essence level had once again made another advancement. In the fight with Wei Xing that day, Wei Xing had found his sword path. Today, Lin Qian also found the sword path for him. Kun Luan had reached its most precarious moment. Lin Qian did not feel any joy. At this time, his level of sword essence was just matched to Wei Xing. His wounds had not healed, and he was still at a disadvantage. But he did not continue to spend time recovering. Kun Luan had reached the edge of a precipice. He must lead. He was also below Kun Luan. Chapter 911, Lin Qian's counterattack. Wei Xing gazed at Kun Luan behind him and then turned around without looking back. Gong Sun Cha, Bi Han, and Yang Yuan Hao had met up. The three top battalions were the top fighting force of Mo Cloud Sea. He needed to hurry back to prevent Lin Qian from targeting them. That loss would be too great. While there was no news of a new god level appearing in Kun Lun's ranks, Wei Xing did not dare to be careless. These three top battle generals were the foundation of Mo Cloud Sea. Gu Liangdao being killed by Lin Qian taught everyone the partnership of top battle general and god level was the best strategy right now. The god level was unstoppable and could create chaos in an army as well as kill the leader. However, they could not take over and hold an entire region with only their power. A battalion must come in and then consolidate their control. And if a top battle general didn't have the protection of a god level, they would become choice targets for the enemy god level. Right now, the three battle generals were together. Wei Xing didn't dare to be careless. He had to be the one in charge of protecting them. Wei Xing also knew that he could not eliminate all of Kun Luan by himself. An enormous being like this had such resilience and vitality that normal people couldn't imagine. When Lin Qian looked at the remnants of Kun Lun's main peak, his tears flowed down. His face was pale, he was soulless as he allowed the tears to flow. He was like a stump of wood that did not move for a long time. Nothing could describe the pain he felt at this time. From a very young age, protecting Kun Luan was his dream. He had grown up, but this goal had never changed. The sacrifices of the elders, Master sending his soul into the sword, they all caused his belief to deepen. Ever since he took control of Kun Luan from his master, he did all he could and didn't dare to slack off. Yet, in his hands, Kun Luan had endured unprecedented humiliation. Even the main peak of Kun Luan had been cut down. He looked around. What he saw was the wooden and sorrowful gazes of the disciples and heard their cries. Lin Qian felt as though there was a knife stabbing his heart. Shui Dong, Mu Xian, and the others that hurried back sighed in relief as they saw Lin Qian. All of the higher-ups of Kun Luan gathered for the first time after their defeat. All of their faces were filled with fury and sorrow. Their gazes all looked towards Lin Qian. This man that had led them to victory again and again. Their eyes had not lost hope. As long as this man was still alive, they had not lost their hope of victory. All of Kun Luan was looking at their leader, their banner. In the history of Kun Luan, we have never been humiliated like this. Lin Qian's deep voice was filled with sorrow. It passed through the sound tablets to every corner of Kun Luan. This my mistake, my responsibility. After this war, regardless of the result, I will abdicate the position of sect leader. Exclamations of disbelief echoed in every corner of Kun Luan. Their eyes were wide and filled with shock. Shui Dong, Mu Xian, and the others changed expression. Lin Qian had not discussed this decision with them. A failure like myself does not qualify to be the sect leader of Kunlun. Everyone could hear the guilt in Lin Qian's voice. Many people's eyes turned red. Kunlun's main peak had been cut down. Many people had felt some anger towards Lin Qian. But no one blamed him right now. This was a man that placed Kunlun's well-being above his own life. Who would bear to blame him? But before that, I still have a battle to finish. No, we still have an unfinished battle. In the history of Kunlun, there has never been a humiliation like this. This is Kunlun's humiliation, it is our humiliation. Only the sword, blood, and victory can wash away this humiliation. Disciples of Kunlun, people of Kunlun, this is our home, this place with our kin. But now, we have been humiliated, our kin massacred, our homes burned. Our Kunlun has reached a precarious time. We have no place to flee, we have nowhere to retreat, we will not be spared. Please of Kunlun, draw your swords. For the glory of Kunlun, for our kin, for our homes. As Kunlun's sect leader, I am ordering complete conscription of all able-bodied warriors of Kunlun. No matter the gender, no matter the age, anyone above mortal rank is conscripted. All businesses regardless of size are restricted from selling any merchandise. All resources will be directed towards the army. All battalions, gather and wait for orders. I, Lin Qian, will lead you on the battlefield. In the name of Kunlun, victory or death. In the name of Kunlun, we march to our final battle. Battle to the end. Listening to Lin Qian's decisive voice in the sound tablet, the entire tent was silent. Everyone had extremely ugly expressions. No one had thought that Kunlun's counterattack, no, Lin Qian's counterattack would be so decisive and reckless. Even Gongsun Cha hadn't expected Lin Qian's move. He was like a gambler that had lost greatly, and went all in on the next hand. The advantage that Gongsun Cha and the others had accumulated had immediately vanished. Shen power had developed for 10 years, how many of Kunlun's sword Xiu had reached mortal level? No one knew, but everyone knew that this number would be enormous. Nether King's 500,000 elite astounded the world, but when the enormous being that was Kunlun sent out all of their members, their potential was something that even Gongsun Cha and the others didn't dare to imagine. Kunlun's battalions were astounding in scale to being with. They had large territories and each of them required battalions stationed there. Lin Qian's conscription order didn't just apply to the battalions, but also to the citizenry. They could easily create an army of over 1 million people. Gongsun Cha and the others would not be surprised if they could gather 2 million people. Even if these people were not trained, even if these people didn't even have the training of the lowest-ranked battalions, this was still a terror-inducing number of people. No one had ever done this before. With his back to the wall, Lin Qian had completely messed up Mo Cloud C's plans. Mo Cloud C's Jinji forts that they had rushed to build were meaningless in front of such overwhelming numbers. He is a madman. Someone said this. Everyone felt agreement. Such an action disregarded all consequences. Even if Kunlun won, they would be greatly wounded, taking years if not decades to recover. But everyone had to admit that Lin Qian's move was extremely skilled. Mo Cloud C's battalions had poked countless holes in Kunlun's territory. Kunlun had suffered great losses. Their plan had been to drag out the fighting, and as time went on, Kunlun would grow weaker. By that time, they wouldn't even have the ability to fight back. Lin Qian decided to take out all of his assets and rush their final battle. At this time, Kunlun had just suffered a great loss and were like a group of grieving soldiers. Lin Qian displayed his zealous attitude. Victory or death. The power that they could muster would be great. Those heroic tales of victory by angry and grieving soldiers were of this situation. How about we hold out? If we can hold for long enough, their morale would be blunted and their untrained conscripts would collapse. Yang Yuanhao glanced at Gongsun Cha. We cannot hold. Gongsun Cha shook his head, his expression solemn. None of our defense lines can hold. Yang Yuanhao did not feel surprised. Truthfully, even he didn't believe there would be a defense line like that. Mo Cloud C had always relied on elite soldiers. They didn't have many battalions, but their training and equipment were all of the highest quality. There was no problem with this strategy usually, but in front of Lin Qian's overwhelming numbers, they immediately became lacking. How about we circle to Kunlun's rear? Kunlun's rear is completely undefended. Tang Fei frowned as she thought hard. Lin Qian is coming at us with everything. Attack the rear. He doesn't care if the rear is destroyed, Gong Sun Cha refused. How about Teacher Wei? Ma Fan said with a snicker. Everyone turned to look at Wei Sheng. Wei Sheng said honestly, Lin Qian and I are evenly matched. The reason that I was able to win last time was mostly due to Gu Yang Dao and Shuang Yu injuring Lin Qian before they died. Lin Qian was wounded and I had an epiphany. But I hear from his voice that he seemed to also have a breakthrough. If I attack, he will have the advantage of territory. Meaning he will likely have the help of a few pseudo-god level, and he would have the upper hand. We also have pseudo-god level. Ma Fan muttered. Mo Cloud C had more pseudo-god level than Kunlun. People heard this and their eyes went bright. Pseudo-god level, cannot travel through the void, Wei Sheng explained. People finally reacted. Yes, god level could enter the places no one could, by traveling through the void, but pseudo-god level couldn't. People looked at each other with ugly expressions. When Zhuo Mo saw the message that Mo Cloud C passed over, he was given a fright. He hadn't thought that Lin Qian would do the same thing as the chief Mo god. But he had to admit the strength of this move. Compared to Lin Qian, the chief Mo god was lacking. When Lin Qian did this, and there were no objecting voices in Kunlun. All of Kunlun were with him in gambling on this battle. When Chief Mo God tried this, there were many voices within the Mo Shin temple that objected. Even if Shui Yu didn't do anything, the Chief Mo God wouldn't have had an easy time. Even though Zhuo Mo had seen so many powerful opponents, no one was stronger than Lin Qian. This person was top in both strength and skill, and he almost had no weaknesses. It was troublesome now. Once a final battle like this was started, the weakness of Mo Cloud C's shallow foundation was exposed. If this was the Mo Cloud C of the past, Zhuo Mo would have also dared to give a conscription order like this. While Mo Cloud C had expanded greatly now, the composition was more complex, and they were not united. This was related to Zhuo Mo being missing for 10 years. If they didn't have enough unity, playing a card like this was akin to burning oneself with fire. In other worlds, Lin Qian could afford to do this, he couldn't. But Zhuo Mo's plans had also reached a crucial time. If this side wasn't resolved, he didn't dare to announce his identity as Nether King. Time once again became the deciding factor in victory and defeat. Zhuo Mo thought for a night before sending his conclusion back to Mo Cloud C. Zhuo Mo's order was very simple. One word, delay, use all methods to delay the enemy. To delay the final battle. Chapter 912, Yuqin Lai's 10 years of preparation. The top brass of the Yao races were fighting intensely. Lin Qian's counterattack had shocked the Yao. Thinking about an ocean of several 100,000 people flooding over caused everyone to feel powerless. Except for fighting back using the same method, no one had any other solution. In the final battle between Kunlun and Mo Cloud C, the Yao favored Kunlun. Kunlun's great unity was of great effect here. The consequences of Zhuo Mo having gone missing for 10 years usually couldn't be seen, but no one could avoid it at this time. And the Mo, the former natural allies of the Yao. They were pressuring the Yao at this time. The intense arguments filled the meeting room. Ming Yuyi sat at the head of the room, her eyes closed as though she was resting. Feng Xinz and Yuqin Lai were standing to her left and right. The Yao were on the weaker side. Even worse was that they did not have a god-level expert. Mu Shi and Bing Lan could not solve this problem. At this present stage, a god level was undefeatable. Suddenly, a voice spoke over everyone without any warning. Everyone, please do not waste any more time. The voice was not loud, but it could be heard over the entire room. All of the arguments and conversations were cut off. The one who spoke was an unfamiliar male. The male was wearing a copper mask. Who are you? Why do I not recognize you? An elder's face changed slightly. He glared angrily and shouted, Who are you? You dare to sneak in. The mask-wearing male completely dismissed the elder's scolding. He stood up elegantly and bowed towards the crowd. He said softly, Good day everyone, I am Nether King. The room was completely silent. Everyone was stunned by the words. No one spoke. Oh, that's not right. The mask-wearing male laughed softly and said, I am the Mo King now. Mo's unfathomable presence descended on the meeting room like that of a god. Everyone felt as though they were gripped by an invisible hand. The strong feeling of suffocation caused their minds to turn blank. Feng Xinz suddenly gave off strong light as Shen power surged inside his body. He didn't know how the Nether King had gotten into the meeting. But the compound was surrounded by experts. If they made a disturbance, the guards outside would flood in. Yet a cold gaze penetrated his defense like an arrow. His Shen power froze. Not good. Feng Xinz's expression changed dramatically. Was this the power of god level? Feng Xinz was the strongest expert under Ming Yu's command. As a pseudo-god level, he had few equals. However, just a gaze from the other had. Terror overcame his mind. He had thought he understood the strength of god level, but the difference in was greater than he had predicted. This was a gap that could not be crossed. Feng Xinz sank into a short daze. He did not notice a blurry figure appear behind his back. A purple light flashed. Feng Xinz finally seemed to wake up. The strong feeling of danger made him turn into a berserk beast. At this time, he felt the restraints around him tighten. He was unable to struggle. In his wide eyes, that terrifying person wearing the mask moved to grab at him. God level. This was the last words in his mind. How could a pseudo-god level have the chance to fight back against a god level and a pseudo-god level expert? Killed in one attack. Feng Xinz's head flew up, the blood spraying onto the ceiling and dyeing it red. Screams sounded inside the meeting room. The face of many elders went pale. They were frightened by this bloody scene. However, the sound in the meeting room was blocked off from the outside. The room was designed so people outside couldn't hear the conversations inside. Even Feng Xinz had been killed in one move. The people who had wanted to attack shuddered. Even Feng Xinz Darren. Ming Yu's gaze turned to Yu Qinli and turned icy. Good. Very good. Yu Qinli. You dare to collude with the Nether King. Ming Yu was not stupid. Yu Qinli had been in charge of security for the entire venue. Only Yu Qinli had the ability to sneak a person inside so easily. Yu Qinli bowed respectfully. I am doing this for everyone's good. The people present had ashen faces. They knew the power that Yu Qinli held. The betrayal of such an important person meant that the enemy had already set up plans to deal with them. Ming Yu did not pay attention to Yu Qinli. She turned and said coldly, Nether King is really skilled, such scheming. Mo smiled. Inside, he was completely won over by Pu Yao and Weiss planning. Mo hadn't thought much of Pu Yao and Weiss plan all those years ago when they had told him about the blood summons and the seeds. Yet what he hadn't expected was that all three seeds had been of monumental importance. If Yu Qinli hadn't guided him, he would not be able to find Ming Yu if he came here. Mo found a place to sit as though he was the host here. Alright, everyone, I believe I don't need to say any harsh words. Let us now discuss the future of the Yao. Mo's words easily passed into everyone's ears. Do not be delusional. Ming Yu's face was frosted over and her tone unusually determined. Even if everyone dies here today, we will not pass your decisions. If you want to conquer the Yao, send your army. Ming Yu's words aroused many people's agreement. They glared with fury at Zhuo Mo. Yes. If you want to conquer the Yao, send your army. Humph, you want to use conspiracies that cannot be seen in public to take down the Yao, naive. Zhuo Mo looked with surprise at Ming Yu. He was not shocked at Ming Yu's determination but the other's insight. Under such detrimental conditions, she was able to clearly see his intentions. It could be said that she originally had no chips in her hand but she had found some chips. While they were not many, there was some to bargain with. She determined that Zhuo Mo wanted to quickly and peacefully take care of the Yao. Otherwise, he could just kill the people here, and then the army could invade. That would be the easiest method. The loss of these leads would leave the Yao in chaos, preventing a coordinated resistance against the Mo army. Zhuo Mo did not do that. Ming Yu immediately realized the crux. Light laughter came behind the mask. If he got pressured in such advantageous conditions, then Zhuo Mo was not the scalping zombie. Snap, Zhuo Mo snapped his fingers and motioned to Yu Qinlai. Yu Qinlai understood and stepped forward. He looked calmly at Mu 11. Mu Shi suddenly had a bad feeling. Mu Shi Darren, the development of the Palace Lakewood clan is praiseworthy. However, under the prosperous appearance, there are always some fatal dangers. We have investigated all the youths of Palace Lakewood clan under the age of 30. There are only 25 that have reached Silver Battle General rank. The Dry Mark Yu clan and the Mile Si Xian clan have more than 4 youths that are almost Gold Battle Generals. If Mu Shi Darren is not present. Yu Qinlai did not continue and Mu Zai's expression already changed. She hadn't thought that Yu Qinlai had been investigating the Palace Lakewood clan in secret. Under the outward prosperity of the Palace Lakewood clan was a hidden weakness. The Dry Mark Yu clan and the Mile Si Xian clan were the archenemies of the Palace Lakewood clan. In these past years, due to Mu Zai's status, these two clans had been suppressed and constantly weakened. If she died. She knew if Yu Qinlai just curled his pinky, the two clans would not hesitate to swear loyalty. The fate of the Palace Lakewood clan could be imagined. Bing Lan Darren. Yu Qinlai bowed respectfully to Bing Lan as usual. Bing Lan smiled coldly. What? I want to hear how you will deal with me. Bing Lan had been an orphan from childhood and did not have the burden of a clan. Bing Lan Darren is not burdened by a clan. In other words, other than your own value as a battle general, Bing Lan Darren's other value is insignificant. Yu Qinlai said easily, as to Bing Lan Darren's corps, you have 12 corps commanders that have the same backgrounds as Darren. Of the 12, 9 of them have married. Their husbands, the clan leaders of the 9 families, are currently guests of the Shadow Guard. Bing Lan Darren, do not worry, we will take good care of them. Bing Lan's expression finally changed. If she was not present, the fate of the corps. Yu Qinlai's gaze did not stop at Bing Lan. He turned his face and his gaze landed on an elder that was looking on calmly. Elder Su is the one in the best situation of all the families. Elder Su has managed his clan well, the clan is united, there are no enemies in the surroundings. You have battalions, and they are also exceptional. Elder Su narrowed his eyes and couldn't help but feel slight pride. What Yu Qinlai said what he was most proud of. He was a person with power in the Council of Elders and his reputation was just below Bing Lan, Mu Shi, and the others. Pity. Yu Qinlai suddenly shook his head and sighed. In the past, Elder Su schemed against the 10,000-mile gang, and had almost destroyed them. The 10,000-mile gang still alive and still remember Elder Zu's generosity. The words 10,000-mile gang caused all the elders to change expression. They had heard of this organization before. The 10,000-mile gang had been vicious and stealthy in their actions. They had ruled with terror. Several decades ago, the 10,000-mile gang suddenly disappeared. No one had thought that Elder Su was connected to the mysterious organization. Elder Su, who had been calm from the start, suddenly stood up as though his behind was on fire. He exclaimed in shock, "Impossible." Yu Qinlai smiled at him. Elder Su, do not be in a hurry. We can discuss this in detail later. Then he dismissed Elder Su. He went on discussing secret after secret as he made his way around the room. Yu Qinlai recited the information and secrets of almost everyone present as though it was his own. Suffocating terror and hopelessness spread through the meeting room. Ming Yu's eyes were wide, and her face was white. She looked in disbelief at Yu Qinlai. Such detailed information, such careful preparation. She didn't know how long this had been planned. This was not possible without years of investigation. She had not known at all. She had thought that Yu Qinlai had betrayed her to the Nether King. Now, an even more absurd speculation uncontrollably appeared in her mind. Yu Qinlai was a spy of the Nether King. Her heart continued to sink. Yu Qinlai's move was vicious. These Yao that held power would fall. These people, and the families behind them were the true core of the Yao, and were the true ruling class of the Yao. All of her chips disappeared. Chapter 913, Response. The change in power among the higher levels of the Yao proceeded in secret. Yu Qinlai's plan spanned far and wide, catching almost all of the Yao higher ranks by surprise. The timing he chose was also perfect. Because the meeting was so important, few were absent. The topic of the meeting became establishing a new council of elders. The higher ranks realized that this was a shuffling of the positions and the discussion and political maneuvering was intense. Soon, new leadership came into the public's view. Ming Yuyi, Bing Lan and Mu Shi kept their original positions. The meeting this time did not cause any unrest among the people. Yu Qinlai, who had ruled the underworld, knew how to attack the weaknesses of people, and after 10 years of preparation he struck. In one hand the stick and the other the carrot, the prestigious families of the Yao were tamed. And the rebellious families were eliminated overnight and did not have a chance to cause a disturbance. Yu Qinlai was vicious and cruel in carrying out his duties. Everyone who knew were frightened. Fighting between families existed everywhere, but compared to the shadow guard uprooting an entire family until not a stalk of grass was left, their tactics were like children fighting over candy. They shuddered in fear. The new council of elders became the top power structure in the Yao. Bing Lan and Mu Shi were alone in the courtyard. The shadow guard did not make things difficult for the two. They retained their freedom, even their status and position hadn't changed. The two felt as though they had just had a dream. The two were very intelligent people. They knew that the Nether King had no fear that they would rebel. All of the higher-ups, the prestigious families of the Yao had submitted. Even if Ming Yuyi rose up and called for an insurrection, there was no use. The ruling caste of the Yao were useless meatbags. The two sat in silence for a long time. The air was heavy. We are finished. Bing Lan's voice was hoarse and her eyes showed great pain. As a battle general, she instinctively disliked people like the shadow guard that worked in secrecy. But she hadn't thought that she would be defeated so easily by people like them. But no one cares. Bing Lan laughed mockingly. Everyone is cheering that they do not need to fight the MO. Once the new council of elders took power, they announced an eternal alliance with the MO. Both sides promised that they would be forever brothers in arms and would stand on the same side against enemies. Also, the Council of Elders was promoting more communication for the Yaoma Alliance. The Yao and Mo realms would construct large numbers of transportation formations to increase interrelations between the two races. Once the news came out, all of the Yao cheered and celebrated. When the Mo had first finished uniting, the Yao had felt threatened. They had all been worried about the Mo invading. The two sides forming the Yaoma alliance meant that the Mo wouldn't invade. A rock in people's hearts landed. The alliance of Yaoma was not a novel concept. The Yaoma were close to begin with due to a long history of fighting together against the Xiuzha. An alliance was not much different. Unlike with the Xiuzha, there hadn't been much hatred between the Yao and the Mo in history. This caused Bing Lan to find it incredibly ironic. The Nether King was silently taking control of the Yao. She was sure that in a few years, the Yao would be completely in the Nether King's grasp. But she could only watch as it happened and couldn't do anything. She had long since learned a truth about people: people didn't care who ruled them. They only cared if they would have peace. The elders of the prestigious families didn't care who ruled them. They only cared who gave them benefits and could make them feel fear. All the core commanders of the Yao were the representatives of the prestigious elders. Each of them had their families behind them. As long as Nether King held the palace Lakewood clan hostage, Mushi could only bow and listen. Each member of a prestigious families was brainwashed with their responsibility to the clan from birth. They would forever place the good of their families ahead of everything else. The ones truly loyal to Ming Yuyi had no chance to struggle under Yu Qinlai's knife. Even Bing Lan had no room to struggle unless she didn't care at all about the lives of her subordinates. If she did anything, then the sisters who had followed her for many years wouldn't be spared. This was Yu Qinlai's style. In planning to retire as corps commander, Bing Lan said coolly. Mushi suddenly raised her head. Bing Lan waved her hand and motioned for Mushi to not persuade her. She smiled as though she had been relieved of a burden. Actually, this result isn't bad. In terms of breadth of mind and skill, the Nether King will be a good king. After the Yaoma alliance is formed, he will not treat the Yao unfairly. And once the alliance forms, it will be undefeatable. She turned around and looked at Mushi. She said solemnly. You need to uphold the banner of the Yao. If I am not wrong, the Nether King will definitely create an alliance council of elders to be managed by the elders of the Yaoma. Among the Yao, you are the only top battle general, your responsibility is heavy. Where is Darren planning to go? Mushi looked at this elder who had promoted her and felt great sorrow. I'm planning to start a battle general house. Bing Lan sighed. We Yao have too few outstanding battle generals. No matter what the fate of the Yao will be, young talents that can prop up the sky are the true future of the Yao. Mushi said without hesitation. I will take care of the funds. Mushi knew that Bing Lan Darren had no family to support her. She had limited resources. Bing Lan smiled. No need, the Nether King will not be frugal on this. The king already thinks of this place as his and the people here as his people. As Bing Lan had expected, Zhou Mo was not frugal at all. Zhou Mo did not hesitate to give enormous resources to Bing Lan and green lit the way. Bing Lan was truly the titan of the Yao battle generals. No one could compare to her experience. When she became the principal of an art house, the battle general house created a great impact before it was even built. Bing Lan Battle General House would shine with great light in the next 1,000 years. It would be one of the two most famous battle general houses of the Yao. The other battle general house was called Pu Pu's Home for Battle Generals. These two battle general houses trained countless famed generals for the Yao in the next 1,000 years. From every angle, Zhou Mo's efficiency was astounding. But for Gong Sun Cha and the others, they still found it hard. It was apt to describe it as though they were passing through each day as a year. All of Kunlun seemed to be mad as they increased their forces on the borders without regard for the cost. In front of this vast ocean, the power of an individual battalion was insignificant. The shadows of the crowds blackened the land like a slow and unstoppable wave. People gazed at it. A strong feeling of powerlessness filled their minds. The vast ocean was still growing. Mo Cloud Sea continued using guerrilla warfare to slow the enemy. They had good results, but compared to the speed that the other side was gaining as time went on, the results were negligible. Kunlun did not seem to notice their harassment. Increase. Continue increasing. Gong Sun Cha and the others didn't dare to charge into the core of Kunlun's forces. Even though the people were untrained, they didn't dare. If they stepped in, they might not even have a chance to escape. The other side had gathered more than 1,200,000 people. What do we do? The situation was growing worse by the day. People did not doubt that if the attack came, they could only flee for their lives. We retreat. Gong Sun Cha's eyes were bloodshot. The bashful smile on his face had disappeared and was replaced with a sharp coldness. Bihan and Yang Yuan Hao were not much better. Ever since Kun Lun's battalions appeared on the borders, they hadn't slept. Retreat? Everyone stilled. The decision that the three top battle generals had thought of after not resting for several days and nights was to retreat? Yang Yuanhao explained. We cannot stop them. If they break through our defensive line, then their morale will grow and while ours would worsen. Rather than letting that happen, we should retreat of our own accord. People started to think. Gong Sun Cha explained. Kun Lun's army is so large that supplies will be a problem. We will retreat and give up the space, but scorch the earth, stain the other's supply line. On one hand, we can blunt their morale, and the other is that their supply lines will be exposed. The people present were all experts in war. Their eyes lit up and they started a heated discussion. We will destroy all the transportation formations, every one, force them to go through the Jie rivers. 1 million pigs, even those won't be easy to transport. Every source of water, every mine, destroyed. So they cannot resume production quickly and produce supplies. We need to move every person. Leave an empty jie, we will leave them empty jies. We need to leave behind guide points, but make them hidden. We can leave more, and use them to build small transportation formations. They don't have to transport many people. This way, we can easily attack their supply lines from the back. Martial law, Mo Cloud C must be under martial law. It is important for everyone to be controlled to prevent some people from making a nuisance. When there were many people gathered, the power was great. As people started to discuss, many details were fleshed out. They could not underestimate the details. Advantages in battle were accumulated through these details. Gong Sun Cha couldn't help but sigh. While the expansion of the past few years had lowered the unity of Mo Cloud C, it had won strategically for Mo Cloud C now. If Mo Cloud C was as small as before, no matter how strong its defenses were, it couldn't hold against such an ocean of people. This is the final battle. Gong Sun Cha suddenly said. Everyone else closed their mouths and looked at him. If this battle is won, then we will win. Lose, we have nothing. Gong Sun Cha's gaze burned and his tone was harsh. Final battle. This is the final battle. Kill them. Everyone roared in response, their eyes filling with blood and murderousness. Chapter 914, Pride. The streets were flooded with people. Everyone's expressions were reluctant as they occasionally turned their heads back. Everyone, please hurry. A shouja floated through the air, their voice passing to every corner through a sound amplification seal formation. Please pay attention the vessel number of your ship, please notice the safety of your valuables. Parents with children, please pay attention to your child. Everyone, do not worry, we will repay you for all your losses. Large numbers of shouja floated in the air. Under their management, the lines were relatively maintained. Mama, will we return? A child looked pleadingly at his mother. The mother comfortingly patted the head of the little boy and said gently, we will. Really? The little boy had a hopeful expression. Great. Yun said that she will also return. Then we can play together. Mama, when we will come back? We will come back when we win, the mother said patiently. Then we need to win fast. The boy blurted out. He turned to look at his home. The same retreat was happening throughout all the jies of Mo Cloud C. The plan from Gong Sun Cha and the others was faithfully carried out. All of Mo Cloud C started to move. Like an enormous machine, it started to turn. All of the treasures ships and transportation ships were conscripted. The fleets covered the sky. Almost all the transportation formations were used at maximum capacity. Jingshi was used up as though it didn't cost anything. A movement of people of such scale had never happened before in history. Mo Cloud C's manpower and wealth was used to its limits. This was the final battle. Mu Shi received orders. The order was written by the Council of Elders, but she knew that the Nether King had been the one commanding her. She was not very surprised. The two most outstanding battle generals of the Yao were He and Bing Lan Daran. Bing Lan Daran had retired and gone to create a battle general house. She was the only one left. As the new orders were announced, the Yao had quickly stabilized. This meant that the king had taken control of the situation. What surprised Mu Shi was that the chaos she had imagined taking place hadn't occurred. As the new orders were spread, the Yao quickly walked out of the solemnity of the past purges and showed signs of prosperity. This new king was really strong. Mu Shi was not the only one who saw this. The other elders also saw this. Not every elder and prestigious family only knew greed. Actually, they hoped the Yao would be prosperous more than anyone else because only when the Yao were prosperous would they receive the greatest benefits. Their resistance against the king was decreasing. That Mo king proved that he could bring them more benefits. Nothing made them obedient towards him more than this. The Palace Lakewood clan was one of them. The Cleverwood clan leader immediately detected the opportunity. He did not hesitate to show goodwill towards the Mo king. The Palace Lakewood clan had an advantage no other clan had. Their greatest trump card, Mu Shi. Mu Shi knew the intentions of the clan. She had no objections. Mu Shi became the commander-in-chief of the Yao battalions. An astounding number of Yao battalions that were mobilized. Over 300,000 people. This was almost all of the battalions of the Yao. Originally, the Yao had more than this number, but Ming Yu's cleansing in years past had caused the number to decrease dramatically. Mu Shi was not the young unknown girl of the past. She possessed resources and reputation now. As Bing Lan Daran faded from the limelight, she became the only qualified candidate to be commander-in-chief. The movements of the Council of Elder attracted the eyes of the people. The movement of the battalions did not attract much attention as a result. When Mu Shi reached the departure point, she was astounded. An army of over 500,000 Mo were waiting with their weapons at ready. She immediately realized it would be a major mission. An Mo politely received Mu Shi. In terms of position, the two were equal. For the people below, they only thought this was a normal alliance of Mo and Yao. But among the higher-ups of the Mo, everyone was given a fright by the actions of the king. Uniting the Yaoma, such an accomplishment had never occurred with the past Mo kings. And Mo, Liang Wei, and the others who knew Zhou Mo's identity were even more shocked and also extremely excited. Uniting the Yaoma, leading Mo Cloud Sea, without a doubt, King was about to unite the world. Mu Zai's gaze landed on Liang Wei. This Yao lead the first battalion of the four great Mo battalions, the King's Horn. She looked at the Mo side that was full of famed generals, and her own side with only her. Mu Shi grimaced. If the Mo really attacked the Yao most likely would not have held. Had Ming Yu Daren's actions been wrong? An absurd thought flashed through her mind. She quickly came back. Liang Wei detected Mu Zai's gaze but he was not affected. An Mo nodded in acknowledgement to Liang Wei. We can start. An Mo admired Liang Wei greatly. He didn't know how King had managed to recruit Liang Wei. Once while talking to Liang Wei, they had discussed his experiences, and an Mo found it hard to understand. Such an outstanding battle general couldn't find a place among the Yao. Did the Yao have so many outstanding battle generals? The Mo were skilled in attacking, skilled in fighting intensely. Among the four battle generals, no one was better than Liang Wei. Due to this, Liang Wei was in charge of the strategy and the other three his assistants. Liang Wei understood. He didn't waste words and said directly, "This time, our plan is to attack from here." His hand pointed towards a jia of Kunlun. All battalions have finished gathering. Shui Dong's voice was filled with excitement. Excitement appeared on the faces of all the battle generals present. This was a final battle unprecedented in its size. The number of people Kunlun had conscripted reached 2,400,000. A number that induced hopelessness. Even they felt themselves shaking at the endless sea of people. This was a power that could destroy everything. Everyone stopped breathing and waited for the final order to attack. Lin Qian stood up and said with a calm expression, "Then let us attack." Attack. The order passed through the ranks and into the army. The army of 2,400,000 was like a vast ocean that slowly moved forward. Nothing could halt their march. Advance! 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 In the name of Kunlun. Brightwood Jie. Meteor shower Jie. Fifth sky Jie. Kunlun's army seemed to be unstoppable. They did not encounter any resistance. Empty Jie, after empty Jie, after empty Jie. Such an enormous battalion meant that they were unstoppable, but it also meant they lost speed. The transportation formations along the way had been destroyed. They had to travel the Jie rivers using transportation ships and they could not speed up. Kunlun quickly learned Mo Cloud Sea's intentions. They want to delay us to death. Chao Xin's expression was slightly ugly. A scorched earth strategy. This move is very effective. The other people had ugly expressions. They hadn't encountered any fighting along the way, as though the other was gifting them the territory. And in every Jia, everything was destroyed. They could not scavenge any supplies. Without realizing it, the morale of the main troops was being ground down. Victory would cause the morale to rise, but the enemy's proactive surrender of land and scorched earth strategy made people feel as though they were punching into cotton. They couldn't be happy. Mo Cloud Sea's intentions were clear. This was an open scheme. But they didn't have the option of retreat left to them. We need to speed up. We cannot give them time to retreat. We need to protect the supply lines. Shui Dong looked at Lin Qian. Lin Qian shook his head. We surrender the supply lines. Surrender the supply lines? Everyone was frightened by Lin Qian's idea. The others' scorched earth strategy meant they could not scavenge supplies. If they surrendered the supply lines. This is the last battle for Kunlun, Lin Qian said coldly. We do not have the ability to fight for long. I have already ordered the rear to transport supplies for 3 months as quickly as possible. They will be sent over in the next few days. After that, the supplies will move with the troops. The longer it takes, the more detrimental it is for us. Shui Dong and the others immediately understood. Their eyes lit up. This is a good solution. Surrendering the supply lines meant that they didn't need to worry that the enemy would attack their supplies. 3 months. Lin Qian's eyes were sharp and his voice were frosty. If we do not win, then we die. Everyone's heart shook. The sect leader's determination was so strong. What methods do we have to increase our speed? Lin Qian asked Chao Xin. Chao Xin gritted out, there is no solution for the larger force. If it is an army less than 300,000, there is a possibility. However, without a god level for protection, the 300,000 is in great danger. The other people were silent. A battalion without the protection of a god level was extremely fragile. This battalion looked terrifying because it had Lin Qian, the god level, present. Without the protection of the god level, this terrifying army would become a piece of fat meat. In front of a god level that could destroy a Jia, numbers were meaningless. Any kind of strength was relative. If they split their forces, it would give the enemy chances. Lin Qian understood. Only when the enemy god level was occupied would Kunlun's strategy of numbers become truly effective. Wei Sheng. He had to occupy Wei Sheng. I'll do it. Lin Qian stood with a calm expression. He did not refuse and didn't even think, as though he was speaking of an ordinary matter. His gaze swept across the group and he said calmly, if I die, the next sect leader is Xian. The youth shook. He suddenly raised his head. But no one looked at him. Everyone looked in disbelief at Lin Qian. Shui Dong felt as though something was stuck in his throat. He tried to make himself smile. He didn't know that his smile was uglier than crying. Do not say such inauspicious things. Lin Qian smiled and then said seriously, I can die, but Kunlun can only win. Finishing, he turned and walked towards the door to the tent. The bright sunshine came from the doorway. Lin Qian's tall figure was silhouetted by the light and people could not see him clearly. Suddenly, his steps paused slightly. Starting today, you will not need to worry about Wei Sheng. The voice that came from the light was just as proud as usual. Chapter 915, the ending. Wei Sheng and Lin Qian faced off in the sky. Almost the moment Lin Qian came forward to deliver the challenge, Wei Sheng flew out. For Wei Sheng, his main mission was to guarantee the safety of Gongsun Cha, Bihan, and the others. The only true threat to Gongsun Cha and the others was Lin Qian. The two faced off in an empty jie. This place is suited for our final battle, Wei Sheng said gravely. Lin Qian smiled. There is no need to harm the innocent in the battle between us. An empty place like this is a good battlefield. You care about harming the innocent? Wei Sheng laughed coldly. As long as it has no benefit for Kunlun, I have no interest in killing people, Lin Qian said honestly. Wei Sheng's eyes lit up. As expected, you had a breakthrough. A step slower than you. Lin Qian shook his head. His expression didn't show any pride. Kunlun's greatest mistake was probably how we handled the Wukong sword sect. Wei Sheng said, Kunlun's greatest mistake is its single-minded focus on itself. Are we the only ones to oppose Kunlun? Lin Qian was silent. Then he laughed and flicked the immemorial Shin sword with a finger. The clear hum of the sword could be heard all over the jie. In the end, there aren't so many rights and wrongs. Lin Qian stood up straight, the smile on his face faded as his eyes became sharp. Only victory and defeat. Wei Sheng shook his head. Many things have nothing to do with victory and defeat. Then what else is there? Lin Qian smiled dismissively. Wei Sheng's eyes held an reminiscent light. His heart was completely serene. Belief. Lin Qian did not argue but nodded. True, however, you have your beliefs, I have mine. Let's use the sword to determine victory and defeat. Lin Qian raised the Shin sword in his hand. Yes. Wei Sheng also raised the Shin sword in his hand. Liang Wei was most skilled in sneak attacks, but a sneak attack of such a scale had never occurred before. Actually, this could not count as a sneak attack. When the allied Yama army appeared on the territory of Kunlun, all of Kunlun sank in terror. Liang Wei shook his head inside. If Kunlun had known the Mo king who had just united the Yama was Zhou Mo, they wouldn't have dared to gamble at all. The power of the two sides were not on the same level. Compared to Lin Qian, King had much better cards. When he thought of this, Liang Wei couldn't help but still. He pondered it but he didn't understand. When did King's cards get so good without him realizing it? He shook his head and pushed away his stray thoughts. They had nothing to do with him. This battle had no difficulty for him. Lin Qian's counterattack had required almost all of Kunlun's manpower. Along the way, they did not encounter any resistance, only panicked and hopeless crowds. Do not stop. Speed up. Push forward at the fastest possible speed. Liang Wei ordered. The Yama army swept Kunlun like a wind. What? Xue Dong's face was ashen, his extremities cold. He murmured. An allied Yama army. Weren't they about to start fighting? His voice trembled. In the tent, everyone had pale expressions. They all knew what this meant. They did not fear that Mo Cloud Sea would attack their rear. Every Xiuzha faction was against them, no one could escape. But the invasion of the allied Yama army meant that Kunlun had powerful enemies their front and back. Kunlun's local defense brigades had little fighting power. They could not stop the advance of the allied Yama army. Even worse was that the news the Yama army invasion would demoralize the army. This was not a trained or elite army. The great majority of them were conscripts who had never even stepped on the battlefield half a month ago. Once they discovered that their families were in danger, then. Thinking of the terrifying consequences, Xue Dong shook. He immediately reacted and said harshly, "Send an order down, take away all sound tablets. No one is allowed to hide sound tablets. No one is allowed to communicate with the outside." Before he finished, a figure stumbled in. Not good. Not good. The outside was already a mess. The already pale faces of the commanders became bloodless. "The heavens want Kunlun dead." Chao Xian murmured. He threw up a mouthful of blood and sank into unconsciousness. "People of Kunlun, if you surrender, if you return home, we promise not to harm your family and guarantee your property." The sound tablet repeated the words that urged for surrender. The same content was broadcast all over the four realms. Even Mo Cloud Sea was astounded by the sudden occurrence. The secret that Zhuo Mo was the Nether King was something only a select few in Mo Cloud Sea knew. The other people only knew that Zhuo Mo would return soon. Zhuo Mo's identity being exposed with an announcement was a fatal blow to Kunlun's forces. Originally, Kunlun had gathered the last of their strength to fight Mo Cloud Sea. Because they thought that if Kunlun went all in, they could kill Mo Cloud Sea before dealing with the Yama. But the Nether King had actually been Zhuo Mo. When this secret was exposed, all of Kunlun sank into hopelessness. All of them understood that they had no chance left. Not one at all. Their army had no purpose. Even if they could fight into Mo Cloud Sea, there was no meaning. The two sides were on completely different levels of power. The effect of the trump card that Zhuo Mo had hidden for so long was great. If Zhuo Mo had shown it prematurely, what he would have faced was a Kunlun that had hidden in its turtle shell. If Zhuo Mo was going to bite through, he would have lost a few teeth. Yet he kept on leaving Kunlun hopes of victory, let Kunlun gather the bravery to gamble everything, and at the last moment, delivered a fatal blow. Kunlun didn't even have the chance to retaliate. Chaos. Complete chaos. The rear was being swept through by the allied Yama army. The army of 2,400,000 turned into a mess. The glory of Kunlun seemed to completely disappear in this moment. Even if Xue Dong had ordered the patrols to kill deserters, they could not stop everyone. Entire battalions were fleeing or surrendering. They only wanted to return home, they only wanted to reunite with their family. Fear spread like a plague. This ocean of people that suffocated people's hope had collapsed like an avalanche of snow. Inside the tent, the wooden crowd of battle generals slowly recovered their spirits. Xue Dong's face was still pale, but his gaze was so sharp it could stab through a person. "We have failed, Kunlun has failed, we have no chance of victory. Let those that want to surrender surrender." He stood, and adjusted his Shin equipment. His expression was dignified and solemn. If surrender becomes the image of Kunlun's final moments, it will be a great humiliation. "Oh Kunlun. Even if you disappear, you need to be more brave to live up to your name." Mu Xian stood up. Everyone else silently stood up. They walked out of the tent. Outside the tent, there were only a few that were still standing outside. Seeing Xue Dong and the others walk out, these Shouja started to organize into their ranks. There was no sound. From beginning to end, it was complete silence. They stood in neat rows like rows of standing spears. An enormous troop was moving towards them from the horizon. The sword energies of the two continued to collide in the air. The ripples of Shin power caused the sky and earth to crack wherever they passed. They were splitting the earth. Cracks appeared in the sky, and there were countless cracks in the ground. Earth fire sprouted up and rampaged. The two sides did not hold back. The two were covered in wounds, but they did not seem to feel pain. They had fought for 10 days and nights without a moment of rest. Suddenly, the two stopped. The two of them looked into the distance. People were coming. Both sides knew whichever side was being reinforced had won. Only the victors would have the spare time to come. When Lin Qian saw Zhuo Mo at the lead, his face turned ashen, and his presence immediately disappeared. They failed. Kunlun had failed. He forced himself to steady his wavering body. After fighting at full power for 10 days and nights, he and Wei Sheng were at the end of their rope. Both were just being supported by a breath. There were many people behind Suemo. Agui, Zhong Ru, Tseng Lianer, Luo Li Woli, Lan, the old man. Each of them were pseudo-god level. Suemo had brought along all of Mo Cloud C's pseudo-god level. Lin Qian had a powerless grimace. This meant the battle outside had finished, completely finished. Only then would Suemo dare to bring all the experts. Kunlun, in his hands. Lin Qian lowered his head to look dazedly at the immemorial Shen sword. Plink. A teardrop landed on the sword and turned into smaller droplets that flew up. Master, sorry. The tears dropped onto the sword and fell along the sword. Master, sorry, sorry. He cried like a child. Sky Moon Jia Wukong Mountain. The Wukong Mountain was covered overrun by weeds and overgrowth covered the ruins. Suemo and Wei Sheng looked at the weeds that had grown taller than they were. Without a word, they began to cleaning. Soon, they had cleaned up all of Wukong Mountain. The mountain was still here, but the people were gone. Shitty. Wei Sheng suddenly spoke. Suemo turned his face. I plan to build a house and live here. Wei Sheng had a reminiscing expression. Let's call it Sword House. All right. Suemo nodded. Don't forget to come my wedding to Agui. Ha. I want good wine. Wei Sheng laughed. The two exchanged a smile. The end.